At this point, it was the second half of the 21st century. A VR game called Sword and Magic was being sold everywhere. It was a VR MMORPG where everyone could play as characters from different races and fight using swords and magic. At the moment when the guy was about to exit the game, someone was waiting for him. The guy looked ahead in surprise. In front of him was a girl who greeted him. It was a beautiful girl with long blonde hair. She was a representative of the elf race. The elf Lala, with shining blue eyes, called out to him, calling the guy Mr. Pepperon. At the moment, everything that was happening was in the throne room of the Demon King. The throne room was huge. On the side of the throne hung a huge canvas with the sign of the kingdom. There, a large crowd of people from different races gathered, watching and listening to the words of their Demon King, who informed them that the moment they needed had finally arrived. The one sitting on the throne was a boy. His name was Pepperon. He played as the king of the kingdom of Gloria Septim. The boy realized that the cooperative game Might and Magic had unexpectedly become a success, thus interesting him. The guy tried to unite representatives of different races to achieve world domination. The capture mode in the game is available only for 7 weak ones, among the 35 types of races presented in the game, Might and Magic. Pepperon himself made his character from such races, namely he became a representative of the dwarf race, the weakest and smallest race of all. The guy remembered how scared he was at the sight of huge monsters. He also remembered how at the beginning of the game he couldn't even handle the simplest opponents. He was easily defeated, and that's how the game ended for him day after day. But by continuing to properly upgrade your stats, you can eventually become strong regardless of your race. Pepperon was able to easily overcome his enemies over time. The boy then created a kingdom called Gloria Septim, where he was at the head of different races. An enthusiastic and numerous audience followed him with admiration. He and his subordinates developed and were able to capture a quarter of the world. This was a magnificent development of his kingdom. Suddenly, someone called out to the guy sitting on the throne. The girl with elf ears asked the guy what they should do next. It was a girl named Lala, a representative of the elf race. Elves were beautiful and strong, but had no special status. They were good at shooting, but their attack damage was low. The girl was waiting for orders from her master. Dwarf Pepperon noticed that the characters' facial expressions were very monotonous, not at all like real people. The girl kept asking the guy for directions non-stop, waiting for his answer. This was very bad for a VR game. The boy smiled and told his subordinate that the day had been difficult, so he decided to take a better rest. Then, still sitting on the throne, Pepperon called the system with the word exit. He tried to exit the game with the system. An inscription appeared on the system unit. The guy could choose to stay or leave the game. The guy chose to leave the game. The guy chose to leave the game. After choosing, the system unit instantly dissolved into darkness. Then Pepperon stopped seeing the throne room. Only darkness remained. After a while, the darkness did not go away. The guy felt something was wrong because his exit from the game was loading for too long. He thought that something had happened to the game. But then Pepperon finally began to see something other than darkness. It was a girl, namely the elf Lala. She was calling her master Pepperon, which left the guy momentarily stunned. Hearing her call, he realized that something was wrong. The elf Lala looked at him with tears in her eyes. She was happy that her master had finally woken up. She came too close to Pepperon out of happiness. The guy was surprised to realize that it was his subordinate elf, Lala. The girl told him everything. It turned out that he had been sleeping for 3 whole days, which alarmed the girl. Then the girl, having calmed down a little, began to wipe away the tears from her face, which had appeared from happiness at the sight of the awakened and healthy guy. Pepperon, however, fell silent for a moment. He could not find the words. The boy felt strange, because the feeling of the graphics was different from when he played. They were completely different. The girl leaned towards him, and the boy could clearly see every detail in Lala's appearance. Pepperon noticed how Lala's elven ears began to move. The guy had never seen such amazing graphics in the game Might and Magic. It was as if the game had become reality. Every movement of the girl was noticeable. The guy suddenly began to understand the whole situation. For a moment, a strange and incredible idea came to him. Pepperon looked stunned into space. Other sensations during the game meant only one thing. Pepperon was in deep shock. He began to examine his body with great surprise, because the guy realized that he had moved to another world. But then the black-haired guy began to panic and deny his assumption about moving to another world. After all, the Isekai genre was at the peak of popularity several decades ago, and at the moment, it has become a classic. Suddenly, a girl approached him. Lala noticed his strange state, so the girl asked Pepperon if she could do something for him. He looked at her in silence, stunned. Then the guy apologized to his subordinate, and then instantly moved his hand towards the girl. He touched the girl's face with his palm, from which her cheeks turned red. Dwarf Pepperon slowly moved his palm, moving to her elven ears. The guy felt the texture of her skin. He thought that it was as if he was touching a living person. The girl had sensitive ears, so her face flushed even more from his touch. Lala, feeling the touch of her master, gasped. The girl could hardly bear her master's touch. The guy understood that no VR game had ever been so realistic. Continuing to touch Lala, he was not even sure if a game with such realistic graphics could exist. The main character thought about it with fear. Lala sadly realized that she no longer felt his touch. She looked at the guy with bright blue eyes and thought that he would continue to touch her. But suddenly the guy pinched his face hard, which made the girl momentarily afraid of Pepperon's strange actions. The guy felt pain from the pinch. He remembered that in VR games you can feel slight pain by changing the settings. The law prohibited connecting pain sensations. Even if you hit your little finger on a cabinet in the game, players felt almost nothing. This is how the game's software itself is programmed, so no firmware or mods will help. The boy didn't understand. If he was really in the world of might and magic, then why he wasn't near the throne? He remembered his luxurious throne, which was in the throne room of his castle. The boy also didn't understand where he was at the moment. After all, before leaving the game, Pepperon was in the royal palace in his kingdom, Gloria Septim. Suddenly, he realized with surprise that he was currently in the wooden hut he had built at the very beginning of the game. The guy was in deep shock from this. He turned pale in thought. After all, perhaps after he had been transported to this world, his kingdom of Gloria Septim had disappeared, and only the very first hut he had built remained. Of all his subordinates, he had gotten Lala, the worst-case scenario. The guy called out to Lala. He wanted to ask the girl where they were, but she only shook her head sadly. She didn't know about their new location. She herself was wondering what had happened to the kingdom of Gloria Septim. Lala didn't have time to figure out how she found herself in the hut. The guy thought that at the moment, there were only two of them. However, the girl did not agree with him. It turns out that his other 5 subordinates were with them, namely the Goblin Gas, the Titan Nobo, the Kobold Pachi, as well as the Wise Demon Eri and the Harpy Fantasia. Everyone except the elf Lala went on reconnaissance to learn more about the place where they were. The girl stayed to look after the boy. The boy realized that at the moment he and the girl were the only 2 left in this place. There was no one else. Pepperon got out of bed, making the girl worried. The girl thought that he needed rest because he had just woken up from a long sleep. But he reassured her, saying that he just wanted to get some fresh air. To which the girl also anxiously joined her master. She wanted to go with him. Then the guy with the girl headed towards the door to finally leave the wooden house. The guy opened the door and found himself outside, in deep shock from the scene he saw. His eyes widened in surprise. Pepperon looked at the surroundings in shock. He knew them. The boy said the name of the surrounding area in shock. The place where they found themselves was the Talsheim Plain. The wooden hut was surrounded only by a plain with bright green grass. It was on the Talsheim Plain that he founded his first base. Then the guy began to expand his territory. First there was a village, then a settlement was created, and then a settlement was created. More and more complex architectural buildings appeared on its territory. With further development, he created his own kingdom, called Gloria Septim. Pepperon understood. If there was nothing on the Talsheim Plain at the moment, it meant only one thing. His kingdom, Gloria Septim, had truly disappeared. The boy was devastated by this news. He grabbed his head from understanding the whole situation. But he came to his senses because of the girl and stopped clutching his head. The guy felt awkward for a moment because of his actions. Lala also realized that Gloria Septim was no longer there. The girl was saddened by this news. Pepperon came to his senses and assumed a calm demeanor. He calmly agreed with the girl. It was quite possible that their kingdom, Gloria Septum, had been lost and wiped off the land. The guy wanted to know the status. He didn't understand their current status in this world. After all, if the country disappeared, then they shouldn't exist either. But judging by the unchanged equipment, everything was fine. The guy looked up and said the word status, but nothing appeared in front of him. Lala looked questioningly with him. She did not understand what he was doing. He didn't know how to find out his current status because nothing worked. So he bent his legs and pressed his feet into the ground and tried to jump. Using the strength of his legs, the boy jumped several dozen meters into the air, causing his companion to be surprised by the unexpectedness. The boy looked calmly down at the ground. Pepperon realized that his basic parameters had not changed. He thought about it. After all, if the height of the jump remained the same, then one could assume that the other parameters remained unchanged. Landing back on the ground, the guy asked the girl about her status. The girl and, apparently, the rest of the guy's subordinates had the same status. The guy realized that the statuses had not changed. Then after that, the guy thought about the changes in power and magic. At this thought, he looked at his palm. Afterwards, he immediately used a fire spell. A bright and small flame quickly appeared on his palm. Pepperon, seeing the fire that had appeared, realized that magic had worked for him. But he wanted to check one more thing. Pepperon immediately used a higher-level spell called Giant Flame. However, nothing happened, and after a while the fire still did not appear. The boy thought that since nothing had changed with his power parameters, he would even be able to use all his spells. However, he realized that only entry-level magic was available to him. At this point, he knew that the place they were in was the real world of the Might and Magic game, and also the initial stage of his base. Dwarf Pepperon and his 6 subordinates were transported to this place. He remembered that all his subordinates like him were representatives of the 7 unsuccessful races, such as elf, dwarf, harpy, goblin, titan, kobold, and wise demon. The boy realized that Gloria Septum no longer existed, and although the parameters remained the same, the use of magic was limited. Magic was only at the initial level. Then the guy awkwardly turned to his subordinate and silently looked at her. Lala was no longer a non-player character, but an NPC, which meant that the rest of his subordinates should have feelings too. In the world of Might and Magic, if the player's trust level is low, their subordinates can betray them. Judging by Lala's behavior, her trust was still at the maximum level. The guy thought that it was probably the same with his other subordinates. However, he did not understand what would happen to them in the future. When they learned that their country no longer existed, they might become hostile towards him. And then his subordinates might revolt against him. If it was just a game, the guy wouldn't care. Suddenly, the door of the room swung open. A silhouette with wings appeared in the doorway. An unknown silhouette screamed piercingly. The guy turned to the source of the sound in bewilderment. It turned out that another of his subordinates had arrived. The girl with wings was happy that her master Pepperon had woken up. She hugged him with all her might out of joy. Lala was shocked by the actions of a girl named Fanacia. Fanacia did not let go of the guy from her embrace. The girl was very worried about Pepperon's condition while she was away on reconnaissance. The boy was caught in the embrace of the harpy Fanacia until an angry Lala pulled her away from him. Pepperon could only look at them awkwardly. Anasia was a cheerful girl with wings. She was a representative of the harpies. Harpies had wings, but they could not fly. Also, their attack power and defense were extremely low compared to others. Therefore, most players did not like this race. The girl was indignant because of Lala. Elf Lala could not help but be displeased because of Fanacia's rude treatment of their master. But Fanacia did not think so. She did not think that her actions were bad and rude. Harpy Fanacia asked the guy with a smile if he was unhappy, to which Pepperon calmly answered her that he had nothing against her actions. But Lala forbade such actions towards the guy. Lala was outraged by this. She would not allow the master to spoil Fanacia. Suddenly, someone entered the room. It was a guy with horns on his forehead. He was puzzled by the noise and wanted to know the reason for it. But soon the boy saw the trio. At the sight of Pepperon, the boy became happy that his King Septum woke up. Ari and Lala fought among themselves for Pepperon's attention. Pepperon could not greet the boy because of Fanacia hanging on him. The guy with the horns was glad that Pepperon was okay. He informed them with a smile that the rest of Pepperon's subordinates would soon be arriving at the hut as well. The guy's name was Gus, and he was a member of the goblin race. Goblins were one of the popular weak races. Of the 7 weak races, they were the fastest, so they could still be used in a variety of situations. Soon, a girl named Eri and a man named Pochi came into the room. They informed everyone in the room of their return. And then Pochi noticed with a smile that their master Pepperon had woken up. Pochi is a member of the kobold race. They have the ability to transform into a beast, but they cannot use it. They are also called bipedal dogs. And Eri is a representative of the race of wise demons. All their characteristics were very low, except for high intelligence and magic. Because of their appearance, many players try to befriend them so that they can be their talismans. Pepperon was glad that the girl and the man had returned. He also noticed that his last subordinate was missing. His name was Nobo. The boy wanted to know where Nobo was, but at that very moment, a huge shadow fell on the guy, emerging from a silhouette of enormous size. It was the Titan Nobo who had arrived. Nobo had a tattoo on his face, and the man also wore glasses. He apologized to Pepperon for being outside. Due to his enormous size, the man did not fit in the wooden hut, and Pepperon himself understood this. Nobo is a representative of the Titan race. They are huge and strong, and their speed was slow. Their attack power belonged to the highest class, but Titans cannot use it to its full extent. The boy suggested going outside, to which Nobo panicked with worry he couldn't force his master to go outside for him. To which Pepperon replied with a smile that he couldn't just leave one of his subordinates on the street while he and his other subordinates were in the house. The entire team of 7 representatives of the unsuccessful races was assembled. Pepperon, who is the king of his subordinates, thanked everyone for their presence. Then the boy waited for his subordinates to report on their current situation. The first to start was the goblin Gus. He went to the northeast. The landscape there was preserved. Everything looked the same as before the creation of the kingdom of Gloria Septim. In the same direction were the caves of Burkham, where they destroyed the monsters and built a mine. At the moment, the same monsters lived there as before. Nobo went northwest. Nothing had changed except that all the structures that should have been there were gone. In addition, the farm near Lake Fauna was not there either. Manhua went west. She used to be sad because she couldn't fly because of her race's peculiarity. So Mr. Pepperon built her a flying castle. But unfortunately, the flying castle also disappeared. Pochi walked towards the east. There used to be a pasture where the captured dragon was kept, but now there was nothing there. The man remembered that in order to catch the dragon, by order of the king, he had to travel all over the world. The last report was given by Eri. She went south. There was a volcano called Ruful. On the volcano Ruful, there was a place for extracting mana, which Eri created after much research. But there was nothing left. Their hard work just disappeared. Everyone realized that this place, wherever it was, reminded them of the past to which they had returned, where the kingdom of Gloria Septim had not yet existed. At this thought, silence fell over the entire team. The boy thought about it. The country really didn't exist in this world anymore. Pepperon thought about it. Suddenly an idea came to him. The boy thought about the decision to disband his team. In the game, he was of course a good king of the kingdom of Gloria Septim who led his subordinates, but the guy didn't know if he could do the same when it all became real. At this thought, the boy was a little scared of the future. Pepperon was puzzled by the problem that had arisen. He did not know what to do. After all, he was currently an ordinary student in his world. So, in the end, the guy would not be able to handle leading them, and then his subordinates would hate him. The team thought about their next steps. Pepperon continued to think about disbanding the team. The guy could do without friends, and he also had all the necessary knowledge for life. So he happily decided to tell everyone about the expense. The guy tried to tell everyone about this decision when suddenly the elf Lala interrupted him. She told everyone else not to worry because Pepperon was with them. The girl was confident in the guy. Pepperon was surprised by her words. His plan was destroyed by her. Lala continued to speak. The guy, starting from a small wooden hut, increased his base, the number of his subordinates, and researched technology. He also strengthened them. the representatives of weak races. Thus, increasing the number of people, he created settlements and cities and then a country. He was able to conquer other states and build the most powerful in the world, namely, the Kingdom of Gloria Septim, in just one generation. All this was done by the great hero, Mr. Pepperon. In the eyes of the girl, the guy was divine and magnificent. Lala enthusiastically suggested that the others follow Mr. Pepperon. Then they could revive the Kingdom of Gloria Septim and conquer the world. The girl with bright eyes looked at her comrades. Pepperon was astonished by Lala's speech. He could only stare at the girl in shock. Suddenly, someone agreed with the girl. His subordinates happily accepted Lala's offer. For Gus, King Pepperon, who was the ruler of the Kingdom of Gloria Septim, was cooler than anyone else. Manhua said that if he was their master, he would be able to build her a castle in the sky once more. Nobo, the Titan with glasses, believed that their master would also once again create a kingdom where no one would go hungry. Kobold Pochi told everyone that he would follow Pepperon anywhere, because he was never bored with him. Eri, with a warm smile, decided to research advanced technology for the rapid revival of the state. Pepperon was shocked by the enthusiasm of his subordinates. He listened with his mouth wide open to their admiring speeches. It would not be good for him if this continued. The boy turned pale. He was fully aware of his situation and that he had to give it up. However, even though he understood everything, it was impossible to refuse in such a situation. After all, his team looked at him with admiration and a smile, which made the guy feel ashamed and awkward. The guy was an ordinary Japanese. So if he couldn't solve this situation, he simply couldn't stand it. Pepperon clenched his fist. Then he told everyone with full confidence to trust him. After all, the guy was the great hero of Pepperon. They were going to revive the Kingdom of Gloria Septim and conquer this world. Thus began the world domination of Pepperon. The second conquest of another world begins with the binding of the 7 weak races. The first thing they had to do was 3 things. The guy hinted to everyone about their next tasks. Eri got the guy's hint. She told everyone that they had to earn money first. Then they had to get food and water. They also had to gather building materials to expand their base. The guy praised her. Lala thought about Eri's words. She asked everyone what they should do. First, they had to divide the responsibilities among themselves. They could split into 3 small groups. The first group would be responsible for getting food and water. The second would be responsible for getting supplies, and the last one would be responsible for getting money. Now they had to give everyone a duty. After dividing the groups, group number 1, consisting of the Harpy Fanacia and the Goblin Gus, was responsible for obtaining water and provisions. Team number 2, in charge of obtaining building materials, consisted of the Titan Nobo and the Ichabald Pochi. There was only group number 3 left. It consisted of the Dwarf Pepperon, the Elf Lala, and the Wise Demon Eri. All of them would be responsible for obtaining money. The team divided their duties well, but Nobo was worried about whether they could all leave the Gloria Septim base and leave it unattended. However, since there was nothing valuable in their current base, everything was fine. Of course, the probability that the hut could be destroyed was not 0, but it would not be difficult for them to rebuild it. Pepperon did not worry about this. The guy, having said this, informed everyone about the beginning of the work. Therefore, each of the teams began their duties. After some time, the third team, consisting of Eri, Lala, and Pepperon, headed southwest, where the Cyclops' lair was located. Their primary task was to fill the treasury with money. Lala recalled with delight how Mr. Pepperon had defeated the Cyclopes in the past. It was a wonderful memory for her, to which the others awkwardly remained silent. In the world of might and magic, dangerous boss-class monsters have lairs in different places. There are many rare items that can be sold for a good price. The boy knew that if this world had returned to its original state, then there must definitely be a lair of the Cyclopes. If their statuses had not changed, then it would not be difficult for them to defeat them. Lala admired the boy's intelligence. She did not expect anything else from him. They needed to deal with the monsters faster. Soon, they approached a place they needed. There were sharp rocks and remains of creatures everywhere. There was also a faint fog in this place. Approaching the place, the guy suddenly felt an unpleasant smell. He immediately covered his nose and realized that it was the smell of decay. It was now real, which proved the reality of this world, which made the guy feel sick for a moment. While the boy was trying to come to his senses from the smell, Eri suddenly informed everyone that she saw the location of the Cyclops' lair. It was not far from them. Team number 3 stood close to each other, huddled together. They stood and looked expectantly in the direction of the lair. Soon the boy noticed one of the Cyclops. His distinguishing feature was that he had a horn on his head. The monster was sitting and doing something, but soon he turned towards the team, noticing their gaze on him. He grabbed his weapon and instantly approached the team. The Cyclops was enormous in size and held a stone club with spikes in his hand. The monster towered over Team 3. He had only one eye, which was a specialty of his race, the Cyclopes. His single eye looked predatorily at the intruders in the form of their crew. The guy realized that in reality the monster looked more complicated than in the game. He realized that it was like breaking into a house without permission, dealing with the owner and stealing everything precious. Cyclone roared loudly and raised his rocky club with spikes. The monster was attracted to the boy and wanted to attack him with its weapon. However, the dwarf Pepperon was able to easily dodge his blow. The blow from the club shook the earth for a moment, and stones flew to the sides. The boy could not do anything about it. It was all for the sake of getting money. He needed to restore his lost kingdom, Gloria Septim. Then Pepperon quickly pulled out his weapon from its sheath. The guy was completely focused and serious. Then pushing off from the ground, Pepperon, rising up, flew at the Cyclops. All his actions were aimed at attacking the monster. The Cyclops was stunned by the guy's sudden movements. Pepperon flew past the Cyclops at lightning speed, simultaneously inflicting heavy damage on him, thus causing the monster to lose the hand holding the rocky club. The guy, without wasting time, called out to Eri in a serious voice. While the roaring Cyclops was distracted by the pain and loss of its limb, Eri pointed her palm towards the monster. Then the representative of the race of wise demons used a magical flame spell. At that very moment, a flame formed on her palm. A stream of fire quickly headed towards the monster. He didn't even have time to dodge, as the destructive fire had already caught up with him. The monster fell down exhausted from the girl's attack. They were able to defeat it. Eri breathed a sigh of relief when she saw the Cyclops' defeated body. Lael was a little sad that they had managed without her. Eri and Pepperon didn't pay attention to her sadness. They had to quickly collect the treasures. In the cave, a treasure chest and bags of jewels were waiting for them. Then, Eri, trying to open the treasure chest, noticed that it was locked and would not open. But with Lauen's lockpick skill, they can open it without any problem. With the help of magic, different types of master keys appeared on Lala's fingers. Then the girl, approaching the chest, began to quickly open it, changing the master keys. Soon the chest was opened with the help of the magic of the elf Lala. It contained many precious stones, gold coins, and also books on magic. Eri, as a representative of the wise demon race, immediately took the books. She found out that the chest contained a book on learning storm magic. Although the training was for 5th level magic, it was better than 8th level flame magic. While Eri was reading the contents of the book, Lala managed to collect all the things they could sell in a chest. The closest city to the lair was Chorus. The team moved in the direction of Chorus to sell the things in that city. Meanwhile, Group Number 1, consisting of the Harpy Fantasia and the Goblin Gus, was in the forest. They were responsible for getting water and provisions. It was still light outside. Gus and Fantasia were deep in the forest. A boy and a girl stood in the huge shadow of some creature. They were wondering about the edibility of their opponent. Gus told her that they wouldn't know until they tried it. Their opponent was a monster. In the form of a snake of enormous size, it looked predatorily at the number 1 team. Fantasia thought that their master liked such things. But even though he did not know Pepperon's preferences in food, Gus did not think so. The girl was worried, because if the master was not pleased, there was no need for them to attack the snake. Goblin Gus told her with a grin that Pepperon would most likely be pleased with whatever Fantasia brought, from which the girl immediately became inspired. She believed the guy. In this case, she would bring the monster to Pepperon. Fantasia quickly headed towards the snake monster. Gus did not even have time to see how the girl was in front. The boy realized with embarrassment that the girl had already disappeared in the direction of the snake. But he did not worry about her, because to defeat such an enemy, only Fantasia was enough. Then he relaxed and turned away from the battle and went deep into the forest to get water. The boy was confident and calm about his companion. Phanesia, however, ran towards her opponent with a smile and lightning speed. She wanted to catch the prey for Pepperon. Maja rushed towards the snake. Her fast running raised dust near the monster. The snake was stunned by her sudden and lightning-fast movements. For a moment, he could not orient himself. The girl teased her opponent with a smile. She did not stop for a minute, moving lightning-fast in different directions, while not ceasing to attract the attention of her opponent. The snake got tired of the girl's teasing. He instantly got angry and quickly attacked Phanesia, opening his mouth with a hiss. But she instantly disappeared, thereby dodging his attack, not giving the monster a chance to even touch her. The monster was shocked by the girl's sudden disappearance. The snake turned in all directions in bewilderment in order to find the girl. Phanesia, with the help of her lightning-fast movements, suddenly found herself on top of the monster. Instantly, the girl pulled out her two swords from their sheaths. She attacked the snake with a double blow, causing it to open its mouth wide in pain. Soon, the snake fell under Phanesia's attacks and was eliminated. The girl, landing on the ground with ease, realized that she had defeated it. Manga said with a smile that the job was done. They had obtained the provisions they needed and fulfilled their duty. At the same time, the Titan Nobo and the Kobold Pochi represented Team Number 2, who had to obtain the building materials. Nobo informed his companion that they needed wood first to make anything. That's where Pochi's sword comes in. But Pochi the Kobold didn't think so. After all, Pochi's sword was meant to protect important people, not chop down trees. The man told him that he would not forgive anyone who stood in Mr. Pepperon's way. However, without duties, he could not simply do nothing. Nobo arrogantly thought that Pochi's sword was useless and only good for cutting down trees. He told his companion that he couldn't even cut down trees. This made the Kobold Pochi angry. The man immediately pulled out his sword and began to deny the Titan's words. He, as the captain of the Gloria Septum strike team, could do it. With a wide and predatory grin, he told the Titan Nobo that cutting down trees was a simple matter for him. Pochi was outraged that Nobo doubted him. He threatened to silence him with his own hands. But Nobo was not bothered by his threat. He felt that Pochi's hand would be weaker than Phanesia's. The second team had no other means of cutting trees. Therefore, they could do nothing. Pochi, thinking about the welfare of his master, began cutting trees with annoyance. The man frowned and began swinging his sword as if it were an axe. Kobold Pochi quickly cut through the tree trunks, demonstrating the sharpness of his weapon. After a while, all that could be heard was the rapid swing of weapons and the sound of flying pieces of wood. The speed of the Kobold Pochi was incredibly fast. Nobo noticed that the woodcutters would appreciate the strength of Pochi's chopping. Soon it was all over. In the area of the forest where they had been getting the wood, only stumps from the felling of trees remained. Titan Nobo, seeing the amount of trees cut down, warned the man about this. He must protect nature. Pochi sighed heavily. He was tired after cutting wood. At the very beginning, Nobo should have told Pochi the right amount. Then, after cutting down the trees, they still had to get the stones. To which the Kobold Pochi was surprised by this. He thought that they had already finished with the extraction of building material. But it turned out that trees alone were not enough. It was necessary to collect other useful materials for construction. The tired Kobold Pochi was depressed by this information. Soon the second team came to a rocky cliff. Pochi, seeing the rocks, thought that they also needed to be cut, but there was no need. However, Nobo could handle the extraction of stones himself. The man then began to warm up. Having prepared himself, the Titan Nobo took a stance to strike. Then, with lightning speed, he attacked the rock, leaving a cracking mark on it. Gradually, after the strike, the rocky rock began to crack, flying apart into stones. Pochi did not expect anything else from the Titan's blow, because that was the peculiarity of their race. The men began to collect the scattered stones, each choosing a piece according to his size. When suddenly they felt a tremor, the earth was shaking from something. It turns out that a rocky monster suddenly began to transform from the stones. Team number 2 realized that a rocky-type golem appeared before them. The golem, standing up to his full height, quickly headed towards Nobo, aiming his fist at him. The bespectacled Titan, holding a stone in his hands, noticed his opponent's movement. The golem struck the titan, causing the ground to shake. But a second later, the rock golem was shocked, as the man was not injured by its attack. He calmly held his opponent's rocky fist with one hand. Nobo, although he looked calm, did not underestimate his enemy and was serious. At the same time, the kobold Pochi, rising up, appeared behind the golem. Swinging his huge sword and roaring at the same time, the man struck the golem's head. After being struck by the kobold Pochi, the rock-type golem was eliminated. The force of the man's attack caused his body to shatter into rocks. Pochi landed on the ground after the attack. The rocky remains of the golem landed on the ground with him. Nobo was engrossed in something. The man told his comrade that they were very lucky. The kobold did not understand anything, so Titan Nobo, holding the stone in his hands and examining it, explained everything. He noted that, it turned out, golem stones were easier to process than ordinary stones. Kobold Pochi was happy with this news. After all, it was good for them. The men took all the materials they needed, taking the stones from the golem. Meanwhile, the third team, consisting of the dwarf Pepperon, the elf Lala, and the harpy Eri, was responsible for getting money for the treasury. The group finally reached the city. The city of Kors was surrounded by a stone wall, erected with one entrance and exit. They wanted to sell all the gems first, and then take all the things they needed. Eri also wanted to buy a lot of spell books. The third team was approaching the gates of Kors, which were guarded by guards. They also needed to buy tools that would help with construction and processing of materials. The guy agreed with this. They needed to buy as much as they could buy after selling the treasures. Soon they were noticed by a guard. He stopped their group. The man noticed that the girls were of the elf race and the wise demon race, and the guy was of the dwarf race, that is, representatives of unsuccessful races. Pepperon did not deny this. But for the man, it was too suspicious that representatives of weak races were walking freely. The guard had a distinctive feature in the form of 3 eyes. He looked negatively at the team. Pepperon didn't understand what was suspicious about them. The boy remembered with bewilderment that the only ones who weren't allowed into the country were the orcs. Their race shouldn't have been affected at all. They had to pass. However, the guard, looking at them suspiciously, continued to speak. He thought that they were runaway servants who stole the master's things and ran away. Pepperon was shocked by the guard's assumption. The boy began to deny the guard's assumption. After all, they had come here simply to sell the treasures obtained from the Cyclops' lair. But he did not believe him. The man informed the team about their detention. The 3-eyed guard wanted to investigate the group and find out their true identity. He called his colleagues to catch representatives of weak races. Suddenly, the team found itself in a difficult situation. The 3-eyed man tried to stop the team because of their suspicions. He ordered his colleagues to grab the guys. Now the team had to come up with something to get out of the unexpected situation. The dwarf Pepperon realized that the easiest option for them was to simply run away. Making an enemy in the form of a neighboring city is not the best way to start the game. The boy thought about leaving the place. Suddenly, a shout stopped him. Indignant, Lala turned to everyone in a loud voice. She angrily told the guards that they had treated the famous hero, the founder of a great power, Mr. Pepperon, rudely. Making the guy shocked, Pepperon realized that their situation had become worse, so he grabbed Lala's hand, preventing her from continuing her outrage, and ran away with his team. The guards, having come to their senses, realized with surprise that the suspicious team was running away from them. Therefore, the men immediately rushed after them in pursuit. Elfo Lala was confused by the guy's actions. She did not understand why they ran away. But he did not answer her. They needed to find another option to get out of the situation. Eri, continuing to read the magic book on the study of storm magic, realized that the situation in the city of Kores had changed a little. The guards of the city of Kores, out of breath, could not reach the team. They did not catch them, because they were too fast. The team broke away from the pursuit. The guy knew that the city they approached was definitely Kors. He was sure that representatives of the race of dwarves, elves, and wise demons should have had the opportunity to visit it. Of course, their weak race was looked down upon, but Eri had never been rejected like recently. Elf Lala also remembered that when she visited Kors before, she always entered it calmly and bought something. The boy thought about it. He thought that everything could have happened because the world of sword and magic became real, so its rules also changed. During the game, despite being a weak race, Pepperon was never neglected. But if all weak and unsuccessful nations were treated like this now, then they would not be able to trade with others. The city is an important place where plans for plantations, laboratories, and other facilities needed for the development of the base are acquired. They had to come up with something to get them as soon as possible. The guy thought that the position towards their unsuccessful races had changed. It was very problematic for them, because now they would not be able to trade in the cities. So the elf Lala, with a predatory look, suggested that they simply capture cores. But the dwarf Pepperon and Eerie, the representative of the wise demons, did not think this was the best idea. They had another option, but it would be difficult for Pepperon and Lala to implement. For this, they would need Eerie. If she hid her tail, then normal people would not be able to recognize her. Eerie could pretend to be human and buy everything they needed. Elf Lala was worried about the guards remembering her, but they couldn't see Eerie's face because she had covered it with a book, so it was okay. If it failed, they could also come up with another solution. First of all, when Eerie entered the city, she needed to sell all the gems in the chest. Then they needed the plans for the plantations, the research center, the decent-looking house. They needed to buy them. Eerie also had to take as many books as possible aimed at studying agricultural and architectural skills, as well as magical almanacs. She also needed to buy a backpack so that she could carry construction and material processing tools in it. Eerie, the representative of the wise demons, casually wrote down the entire list of things they needed on a piece of paper. If the girl did not have enough money for everything, then in that case she had to choose the most necessary things. The girl understood everything. Then she hid her tail, which was one of the distinguishing features of her race of wise demons. After that, she put the chest on her head and headed towards the entrance. Lala wished Eerie luck. Approaching the entrance of Quores, the girl talked to the guards for a while. The guards were a little hesitant about her, but she was able to pass. The guards were surprised that an ordinary-looking girl was carrying a treasure chest without much effort. The boys sat down and thought about how they should let Eerie do the shopping for a while. It would be good to have some disguise magic, but it was level 3, so it was unlikely to be sold in the city. Lala, with a predatory look again, suggested to her master to capture the city of Quores for future prospects. The guy was a little surprised that she was warlike. The girl was very different from the game version, but it was worth remembering that this city was not on its own. The city of Quores was subordinate to the state of Linzel. Therefore, since they had low-level magic, if they went to war against an entire country, they had almost no chance of winning. Lala understood this, but she was furious that a simple guard had been rude to her master Pepperon. Out of anger and irritation, the girl, frowning, began to bite her nail. After some time, Eerie came with her purchases. Pepperon and Lala were still waiting for her near the entrance to the city of Quores. They were happy about her arrival. Eerie easily carried a huge backpack filled to the brim. She told him that the gems were quite expensive. Therefore, the girl was able to buy everything she needed with their help. Pepperon wanted to know the situation of the city. But inside the city, almost nothing had changed. Everything looked the same. However, Eerie noticed that she did not see any of their 7 weak races. The three-eyed race still dominated in Quores. The boy thought about it after hearing Eerie's information. If other cities had the same situation, it could be a problem for them, the unsuccessful races. Suddenly, an incredible idea came to him. After all, this world of magic and sword was no longer a game, so the guy did not have to rely on any specific races. Previously, he continued to focus on the established rules in the game, but now everything has changed. Pepperon had a great idea. The inspired guy wanted to get back to Gloria Septim's base as soon as possible and propose a new idea to his team. The girls agreed with his proposal. After some time, a huge amount of things were found in the Talshine Plain. Building materials, plans, books, tools, provisions, and water. Everything was obtained. Now they had all the things they needed. Pepperon was stunned that his subordinates had managed to collect so many things in just a few hours. That was what it meant to have capable subordinates. The others looked at all the things they had acquired. Soon the harpy Phoenicia approached the guy. She was very hungry after doing her job. Her stomach began to rumble from hunger. Then Pepperon looked at the food they had gotten for lunch. The boy was shocked that they had caught a snake for food. A huge piece of snake meat lay in front of him. towering over the dwarf. Phanasiache informed him that she had tried very hard to defeat the snake-like monster. The girl was expecting praise from her king. Pepperon praised the girl, but he was thinking about the edibility of the snake meat. He didn't know if it was even edible. Also, no one knew how they would eat the snake meat. Goblin Gus suggested cutting it into pieces and then frying it. Kobold Pochi could handle the first point perfectly, so Gus suggested it to the man. Kobold Pochi was outraged by Gus's suggestion. Everyone always thought of his sword as some kind of tool. Goblin Gus did not deny it because he believed it to be true. But their conflict was over before it even began, because both guys were distracted by the girl. Harpy Fantasia, holding her swords in her hands, suddenly announced to everyone that she would be the one to handle the cutting of the meat. The girl instantly, and lightning fast, headed towards the meat. At the same time, she swung her two swords. Fantasia used her skill, Thousand Strikes. While the girl used her skill and cut the meat, Gus and Pochi had to run in different directions to avoid her endless blows. Blow after blow was constantly aimed at the snake meat, thereby crumbling it. After a while, the girl turned to her team with a smile. She was waiting for their reaction from her skill, Thousand Strikes. Everyone noticed that the pieces of meat she cut were perfect for frying. Eri, seeing this, went to light a fire with flame magic. Now they would have no trouble eating. Pochi and Gus were still stunned by the recent incident. They verbally attacked the girl with anger. After all, she could have hurt them with her technique too. So they were a little angry at Fantasia, to which she apologized. After a while, the fire was lit and the perfectly cut meat was put to roast. Soon, the delicious aroma of roasted meat spread around the fire. Anmaja's mouth watered from the aroma that appeared. She was impatiently waiting for the moment when the meat would be ready. Eri noticed that the meat was already ready and could be eaten. Lala came out first to taste the meat. Taking a piece with her fork, the girl tasted the fried meat. Then she opened her eyes wide and was surprised to feel the pleasant taste of the dish. Even without marinating, the taste of the big snake's meat was clearly felt. After Fanasia's technique called Thousand Strikes cut it into pieces, it still continued to resist phantomly. The elf Lala, having tasted the meat, pretended to tell them that, although it had a strange aftertaste, the dish was edible. The boy knew that, although she had given a modest report, she herself looked as if she had never tasted anything more delicious. Eri soon brought Pepperon a portion of fried snake meat. The guy took it awkwardly. It was a little strange for him to eat this dish, but after tasting it, he noticed with amazement that the meat was delicious. Surprisingly, the meat was quite good. The whole team began to devour the fried meat and rejoice at its pleasant taste. After a while, the fire was extinguished. The lunch break was over. Now they had to start building the base. Everyone was inspired. Everyone was busy with their duties. Some were looking for blueprints. Some were starting with woodworking. Everyone was busy, except Pepperon. He just stood there, arms folded, watching them. When this world was a game and not reality, his subordinates did all the building and everything else. Pepperon did nothing, so he thought for a moment. Suddenly, the elf Lala came up to him. She helpfully brought the guy a wooden chair, so that he could rest on it. The guy accepted the offer and sat down. Even when everything became reality, Pepperon could only sit and watch. Even though this world was real now, his subordinates were doing just fine without him. In the game, the guys built a frame and erected a house easily and quickly, which was impressive for the guy. However, the guy, sitting idle, just looked at how busy and absorbed everyone was in the construction work. Because of this, he felt bad and ashamed. After all, this world was no longer a game, so Pepperon decided to try it too. The boy, leaning on a wooden chair, began to rise from it. Dwarf Pepperon was cheerfully approaching his team. This time, his help would be needed. The guy wanted to help them. His subordinates immediately noticed his movement towards them and looked at the approaching guy with surprise. And at the same moment when the guy approached his subordinates, the girls categorically refused his help. Dwarf Pepperon was surprised by their quick refusal. Elf Lala didn't want their master to participate in such small matters. The boy couldn't even say anything back to her. Then Eri joined Lala. She also agreed with her. The boy shouldn't have done this. The elf Lala, standing in a tragic pose, understood with admiration that the guy was so kind and always tried to understand their feelings. But it was all right. Working for him, She and the others were filled with boundless happiness, no matter how difficult the task was. The bright-eyed girl enthusiastically told the boy about it. So Lala and Eri again suggested the boy to sit on a wooden chair and rest. Dwarf Pepperon awkwardly accepted their offer. Each of his subordinates was busy. Some were looking at the blueprints, some were carrying the materials they needed, and some were building the building. Only Pepperon, sitting on a chair, looked at it with curiosity. The boy thought that unlike hunting monsters, building was considered a small task. He never thought about it, because during the game he was always constantly hunting. Soon evening came, it became dark outside. By evening, everything was ready. The main building had been transformed from an ordinary hut into a luxurious residence with several floors and a tower on the roof. There were also lanterns in the form of pillars with fire, fields with beds for future agriculture at the base. There was also a well and a storage with provisions. The boy was stunned by the new look of his settlement. Even though everyone had excellent skills in building structures, his subordinates finished building the base very quickly. Harpy Fantasia wanted to ask Pepperon what to do next, but it was already late, so the guy suggested continuing everything tomorrow. From tomorrow onwards, they had to start developing the base. Eri, a representative of the race of wise demons, was tired all day and began to yawn from fatigue. Pepperon was thinking about finding new subordinates for his base. Elf Lala, hearing about this, thought about it and became puzzled. After all, finding new subordinates for the base was the most difficult and troublesome task of all. After all, the level of their base was quite low. In addition, according to the rules of Gloria Septum, only representatives of the 7 unsuccessful races can join them. That is, only titans, elves, harpies, dwarves, goblins, kobolds, and wise demons could do this. The girl's words made the boy's eyes widen. He was shocked to hear about the rule that only representatives of the 7 weak races could join his base. The boy thought that the game Sword and Magic, even after becoming a real world, had retained his attachment to races. Dwarf Pepperon resolutely wanted to abolish this restriction for the sake of the future of their kingdom. The guy was about to speak out about it, but he was interrupted. Goblin Gus told everyone that King Perrin had done a lot for the races rejected by all. Therefore, they must adhere to this rule. Pepperon was only shocked by this. Kobold Pochi and Titan Nobo also agreed with Gus. They didn't want to see anyone other than their 7 unsuccessful races. Although it would take a long time, they agreed to it. Dwarf Pepperon could only remain in shock. What he did before was to increase the difficulty level of the game. To increase the level, he only took the representatives of the 7 unsuccessful races into his kingdom, and now it will be considered his lifelong dream for others. The boy was taken aback by the words of his subordinates. The state was no more now. This was not the time to be faithful to the rules. Lala suddenly called out to him, causing him to flinch. Pepperon calmed down and stopped being nervous. But at the same time, the guy couldn't tell everyone that he was now ready to be friends with representatives of other races. After all, if they started to rebel, it wouldn't end well for him. So the boy, clearing his throat, with a forced smile, agreed with the rest of his subordinates to uphold the rule. No matter how long it took them, Gloria Septum was a country for them, the 7 unsuccessful races. The base heard joyful cries towards the boy. Pepperon decided to continue uniting the 7 unsuccessful races. Once he chose a path, he can only continue to follow it. The next day came. The morning sun was shining brightly from above, spreading its sunbeams everywhere. The team gathered in one place early in the morning. Gus and Pepperon stood at the board. They presented everyone with a plan of their future actions. The team needed to raise the base level. There was still plenty of work to do. It was too early for them to relax. Goblin Gus told them the plan. The current Gloria Septum base was only level 1. To reach level 2, which would upgrade the settlement to a village, they needed a laboratory, several dozen houses, 50 residents, and other additional conditions. Almost everyone was sleepy. Only Lala was unhappy that Gus was the one helping Pepperon with the explanation. According to the construction, they needed to build more houses. The development of architecture and gardening, as well as finding new residents, are now the main goal. Pepperon suggested that Eri do research. The girl, who was still not fully awake, agreed to the guy's proposal. Pepperon noticed that she looked rather sleepy. The girl could barely walk somewhere. Gus knew that Eri had been like this since the morning. Then Pepperon suggested that his team distribute the duties among each other. After that, they were to split into two groups. Those who would go with him to look for new subordinates, and those who would remain at the base for construction and security. Lala was looking forward to this. Phanassia recovered from her sleepy state. The elf Lala wanted to calmly offer Pepperon to become his companion on the journey, but she was interrupted by the harpy Phanassia. She quickly and loudly offered her candidacy to the guy. He noticed it and agreed, so the atmosphere changed immediately. A gloomy Lala told the others in a menacing voice that she hoped there would still be a free place in Pepperon's team. She did not let the others take her place. The subordinates ran away from the girl. They awkwardly chose another team, just not to anger Lala more. Nobo and Gus will deal with the housing issue, and Pochi will guard their base. So Pepperon had no choice but to offer the remaining girl to join him. The elf Lala happily accepted her master's offer. Suddenly, the harpy Phanassia noticed a crowd in the distance, which was approaching them. The crowd soon appeared from afar. They were calmly and threateningly heading towards them. There were a large number of men with scars and weapons. They looked at the team with a predatory and threatening look. Among them, at the head, stood a dark-haired man with an eye patch. He walked towards them with a smile and a weapon on his shoulder. The dwarf Pepperon was calm. He understood that they were bandits. But he did not worry about it, because it would not be difficult for them to drive away the bandits. Suddenly, the boy realized that the bandits were people, not monsters. He didn't know if he could eliminate them. It was a problem for him. He remembered how in the game the guy destroyed many opponents. Although it was in the game, in reality it was a completely different matter. The guy thought about it. Suddenly he stopped worrying about the problem that had arisen. After all, he had already been able to feel a similar feeling of elimination in the battle with the Cyclops. The guy forgot about the thoughts that had been bothering him recently. The bandits looked at the crew with predatory eyes. They noticed that they had appeared on the Taosheim plain quite recently and had built their settlement. The men also saw that the crew consisted entirely of representatives of unsuccessful races. Usually, representatives of races like them were sold into servitude by bandits. But they will make an exception if they pay 1,000 gold coins weekly. Pepperon wasn't scared by them. The guy, closing his eyes for a moment, just sighed calmly at their offer. Pepperon did not want to agree to such a terrible deal. He told the bandits to go away, because he considered it a waste of time to pay attention to them. The boy easily removed the bandit's hand from himself. The bandits did not consider the guy a threat. At his words, the blond man and the bandit leader simply laughed. Then one of them pulled out his weapon. The blond man pointed the sharp end of his saber at the boy. He gave them a chance to choose whether to pay for their lives weekly with 1,000 coins or to be liquidated. Pepperon also gave them a chance to retreat, and then he would forget all their stupid actions. From which the man laughed evilly and only became more angry. He, waving his weapon, headed towards the guy, trying to attack him. But the blond man didn't even have time to attack the guy, as he was attacked from behind. He could only feel the damage from the attack in surprise. The man's attacker was the goblin Gus. The guy quickly dealt damage to his opponent. Gus, having calmed down, noticed that he did not let his opponent finish. But in fact, he did not care. The blond man fell from the guy's attack. The robbers were surprised by what they saw. Goblin Gus thought he had eliminated his opponent too quickly. But Pepperon had nothing more to say to him. He himself did not want to leave on good terms. The bandits were silent. They were scared. Pepperon, in a dark tone, ordered his subordinates to attack the uninvited guests. At the same moment, the kobold Pochi, the titan Nobo, and the harpy Phanassia enthusiastically headed towards the enemies. The battle began. Phanassia quickly attacked the opponents with her swords. Titan Nobo, with his titanium power, dealt damage to the bandits, so they had to run away from the titan screaming. Pochi quickly dealt with all the opponents. The bandits realized with horror that their opponents, despite being a weak race, were very strong. They realized their dangerous position in the battle. Suddenly, their attention was drawn to someone. They saw an unarmed girl of the elf race. She looked like an easy prey in their eyes. Therefore, the bandits decided to attack her. They approached her from behind her in lightning speed and were about to attack. But before they could even touch her, one of them was wounded. It turns out that a magic circle was drawn near the elf Lala. The girl summoned a saber with it and attacked the man. Elf Lala grabbed her saber by the hilt. No matter how ineffective the races were, they could use basic magic. Just because the enemy was unarmed, they already considered him weak. The girl with a calm face stood in an attack stance, pointing her saber at her opponents. The bandits surrounded Lala and headed towards her. They were angry about the whole situation, so they thought that she would not do anything to them with one pathetic sword. They all wanted to attack her, because she looked the weakest of them all. Suddenly, the girl took a step. Soon she approached her opponents with quiet and quick steps. Lala quickly and calmly dealt with all the bandits. To her, they were a group of fools who thought they could point a blade at her master, Pepperon. The girl was not happy about it. Meanwhile, Pepperon watched the entire fight from the sidelines in silence. A terrible spectacle was happening in front of him, but he felt completely calm. The guy thought that it was due to the influence of cold-blooded mastery. In the world of magic and sword, there is cold-blooded mastery, and the higher it is in level, the easier it will be for the player in battle. When this skill is low and the player is still fighting a large number of enemies, if any of them are destroyed, the player receives an abnormal status and cannot move for some time. However, his cold-blooded mastery was at its maximum level, namely level 50. Even after eliminating 300 enemies, he did not receive any abnormal status. The boy thought with relief that thanks to this skill, he could also calmly analyze everything during battle. Pepperon hoped he could maintain his composure in other similar situations. He continued to watch the battle. The bandit leader stood quietly beside him, looking scared. He was frightened by their strength. The man did not understand why such unsuccessful races could be so strong. He wanted to know their identities. The man stepped on a stone, and because of the sudden sound, Pepperon noticed the leader of the bandits. The man immediately became frightened. His legs could not hold him up because of fear, and he fell. Pepperon, holding a sword in his hand, noticed that the bandit subordinates were not sparing their strength in the battle, and he simply stood behind and watched. The boy pointed the sharp end of his sword at the bandit leader. He wanted to hear the man's last words of farewell. The frightened man could only stutter and ask for help. But he was not given mercy. The guy quickly eliminated the leader of the bandits. After a while, they completely dealt with the uninvited guests. Although they had an unexpected obstacle in the form of bandits, they had to return to the original plan. Lalo and Fantasia would go with the guy to look for subordinates. The rest of Pepperon's subordinates said goodbye to him and reminded him to take care of himself. The boy said goodbye to them and accepted their parting words. The group was heading north. At the foot of the mountain was an elven village called Ashirs. Pepperon wanted to find volunteers there who were willing to move to another place. Harpy Fantasia laughingly told them that she hoped they wouldn't be as terrifying as Lala, which immediately offended the elf Lala. Lala didn't understand how terrifying she was, but when it came to Mr. Pepperon, it was better not to be around her. Pepperon thought it was true. A few minutes before the arrival of Pepperon and his comrades. Night had fallen. It was dark outside. The village of Ashirs was quiet. Only a menacing voice with accompanying screams could be heard. Someone ordered someone to sit silently. It turns out that all the residents of the village of Ashirs were captured and immobilized with a rope. They were battered and frightened by the situation. The unknown robber learned from his comrades that they had already cleared the entire village of Ashirs and captured all the villagers. Night came. The full moon appeared. It illuminated all the forest surroundings. In addition to the sounds of the cuckoo, the sad voice of the harpy Fantasia was heard. She wanted to eat. The girl was barely able to follow her comrades because of hunger. The guy did not understand the girl's condition because she had eaten a whole roasted boar for lunch. Besides, they would soon reach the village of Ashirs, so she had to endure it. Elf Lala walked ahead of the team. She was sure that the village of Ashirs was somewhere nearby. Pepperon tried to support the tired and hungry Fantasia, because she began to whine from feeling unwell due to hunger. Soon, Lala noticed a light. It was the fire from the torches located near the entrance to the settlement. It brightly illuminated the surroundings of the village of Ashirs. Manhua immediately ran towards the village with joy. She wanted to eat something. Lala tried to stop the girl who ran away. The guy realized that they were able to reach the village only after midnight. It was fast. Harpy Fantasia, approaching the entrance of the village of Ashirs, joyfully greeted the residents of the village of Ashirs. At the same time, her wings spread out from joy. The girl hoped to finally eat. But then she fell silent. The team noticed with surprise and horror that the village of Ashers was destroyed. Debris from destroyed houses lay everywhere. Someone had attacked the village of Ashers. Soon, a man's voice was heard. He asked the others with an evil smile about the number of elves they had caught. Another lizard race bandit answered that he had seen someone else in one of the houses. The three-eyed race man was wearing a mask. He didn't want to go back to Asher's village because of one elf. It was also inconvenient for them to go because of the aftermath of the battle, so he wanted to ask his companions to move to the side. The company held the wounded villagers in their hands. The bandits grabbed all the elves, put shackles on them, and forced them to go somewhere with them. They did not spare anyone. If any of the captives stopped, the bandits would punish him. Lala watched with deep horror as her kin were humiliated. She realized that the bandits had captured all the elves from the village of Asirs. Pepperon watched the incident in silence. Pepperon knew the identity of this company. All the bandits who were in the village of Ashirs were members of the BBC group. BBC was an abbreviation for Black Company. In the world of might and magic, they were involved in human trafficking, selling horrible substances and illegal magic books, as well as liquidations and kidnappings. The largest criminal group. Most likely, the group of bandits was going to sell the captured elves from the village of Ashirs into service to someone. Therefore, they captured every single one of them. Pepperon himself was once a member of the BBC and achieved considerable success. When he acted cruelly, he was guided by the fact that it was only a game. Although even so, he felt bad. The guy thought that if he got involved with those guys, he might just sign himself up for elimination. So they shouldn't take any action against the bandits, because their Gloria Septum base hasn't even become a village yet. The full moon shone brightly in the night sky. Pepperon was sad that they could not make these elves their subordinates. But he could not do anything. They had to avoid unnecessary risks. When suddenly Lala's menacing voice sounded, she wanted to stop the bandits. The girl was sure because next to her was the great hero, Pepperon. In her eyes, he would never stand silently and watch the incident with the elves. The guy did not want this. But even Phonacia was angry because of the destroyed village of Ashirs. She angrily agreed with Lala's words, because the bandits had done horror to this village of Ashirs. Now it was impossible even to eat there. The girl had other goals in the form of food. The bandits did not consider them their enemies. They were not bothered by the anger of the weaker races. The group began to laugh at them. Pepperon realized that, unfortunately, they had paid attention to the team. The lizard-like man mocked Pepperon. He did not consider him an enemy because he belonged to the dwarf race. Also, the masked bandit had never heard of a hero with such a ridiculous name. Lala heard the robber's words and was angered by the man's rudeness. She wanted him to pay for his words. The girl looked at the man with a dark look. Suddenly, another robber, who was from the three-eyed race, joined the conversation. The man with the third eye looked at the girl. He was dissatisfied with the girl's actions and did not consider her an equal opponent. Pepperon felt uneasy about this. They had no more options to avoid the fight. If they dealt with them and left no witnesses, then everything should be fine. Although he didn't want that, and the guy wasn't entirely sure about it. He then ordered Lael and Phonacia to eliminate the bandits. Pepperon moved forward towards the BBC group. The guy told the girls that they shouldn't let anyone escape. The guy said this to his subordinates with a gloomy look. The girls, enraged by the bandits, accepted their master's order. Lala and Phonacia looked at the men with predatory and gloomy glances. Together with the guy, they confidently headed towards their enemies. At the same time at the base. It was also night, and it was very calm and quiet. The remaining subordinates were sitting in one room at one table. They were thinking about what race the new inhabitants would be. Kobold Pochi first wanted to raise an army capable of defending the future state, Gloria Septembi. Therefore, he considered it necessary to have about 100 kobolds to solve this problem. However, Nobo disagreed with the man. While drinking tea, he said that the guards needed people who could use not only strength, but also brains. Pochi was outraged by the Titan's words. He grabbed the hilt of his huge sword in anger. But the Titan Nobo continued to calmly drink his drink and read the newspaper. Goblin Gus felt a little awkward from their squabble. That's why the guy turned his attention to Eri. The girl was engrossed in reading a magic book while eating food. There were a huge number of plates next to her. She assumed that the residents would be from the village of Ashers, and that meant that they would all be elves. The men realized with shock that the newly arrived residents would most likely be representatives of the elven race. They froze at the girl's assumption. The remaining subordinates, except for Eri, became worried after hearing the girl's words. Silence fell in the room, and everyone thought awkwardly. Eri calmly continued reading the book. The men hoped that the elves would not be as terrifying as the elf Lala. Meanwhile, somewhere in the dark night, in the village of Ashirs, endless cries of pain were heard. Anasia and Lala quickly dealt with the bandits. The immobilized opponents lay after the fight with them. The remaining bandits were shocked by the strength of the girls. They wanted to know their identities, because they seemed to be not from the unsuccessful races. Absolute power towered over the bodies of the enemies. The girls looked at their enemies with a predatory gaze. The robbers were scared. They considered the girls real monsters because of their terrifying power. Pepperon, meanwhile, went deeper into the village. He thought about what he could entrust to the girls to deal with the remaining bandits. And in the meantime, he would take care of rescuing the elves. The village of Ashers was littered with debris from the attack on the villagers. Somewhere in the depths of the village were all the captured elves. The immobilized and dejected inhabitants of Ashers were sadly sitting on the ground, with two bandits standing next to them. The men grinned as they counted the number of captured villagers from Ashers. Everyone was there. Suddenly, one of them, who looked like a rhinoceros, heard someone scream, which attracted his attention. The bandits noticed that there was noise coming from the entrance. The rhinoceros man began to see someone's silhouette in the distance. Soon the silhouette appeared in full before them, and they realized that it was a guy from the dwarf race. The guy was calmly heading towards them. Pepperon also noticed everyone. He finally found the captured residents of the village of Ashirs, but his way was immediately blocked by the robbers. They pointed the sharp end of their weapon at the guy. With arrogance, the men wanted to attack him and find out the reason for his location in this place. However, instead, they themselves felt the damage from the attacks. Pepperon dealt with his opponents in a flash. He quickly and calmly headed towards the captured elves. The guy wanted to know their condition. One girl from the elven inhabitants wanted to tell about their condition, but the guy had no time for this. First, he had to figure out the ropes on them in order to free the immobilized inhabitants of the village of Ashers. While the guy was figuring out the ropes, because they were too tight, one of the bandits managed to recover from Pepperon's attack. Standing up, he walked towards the guy with heavy steps. The robber was angry that he was defeated by the dwarf, so he swung his weapon and wanted to attack him. He ran towards the dwarf with an angry shout. The girl with short hair warned Pepperon with fear, but he told her not to worry. Pepperon was not worried about the robber's attack and did not even turn towards the man. Behind the angry and wounded man, Fanacia and Lala were instantly ready to attack the bandit. Fanacia held her swords, and Lala aimed her weapon at the man. He felt a strange presence behind him. The man wanted to turn towards them. His actions served as a signal for the girls to begin attacking him in order to eliminate the enemy. Having landed, the girls attacked him and instantly dealt with the man. He fell to the ground exhausted from the damage of their attack. Pepperon, without turning around, thanked the girls for their help. The boy was absorbed in untying the rope on the residents of Ashirs, and the villagers were in deep shock from what they saw. All the elves had their eyes wide open in amazement. Lala, holding a saber in her hands, told her master with a smile that they had destroyed all the enemies, as if she had not attacked the bandits a minute ago. Fanacia was not as happy as the elf. The girl was very hungry. The short-haired Ashirs resident, who had warned Pepperon earlier, noticed that Lala was the same race as her and the other residents. They were all elves. Pepperon turned to his subordinates. They had to split up and untie all the captured elves. Lala happily accepted his order, and Fanacia held on with her last strength. The guy was a ray of hope for the residents, who broke through despair. Soon, all the residents of the village of Ashirs, where the representatives of the elves lived, were freed. They surrounded the team and looked at their benefactors. Fanacia was completely absorbed in food. The girl quickly devoured the food provided by the elves. She thanked them and told them that although food was an important part of life, they should not have spent so much food on it. Fanacia, although she told the villagers so, did not stop and continued eating. The residents of Ashirs were grateful to them, so they did not spare food. Lael was a little ashamed in front of them, so she tried to stop the harpy Fanacia, but she quickly gobbled up the food. The girl who led the inhabitants was happy. She didn't know what would have happened to them if it weren't for the team. So the elf leader thanked the saviors, which made Pepperon feel awkward. He awkwardly informed them that as long as he lived, he could not allow such terrible things to happen to anyone. After all, it was a given. The girl, a representative of the villagers of Ashirs, gave her name. Her name was Lucy. She was the head of the village of Ashirs. The distinguishing mark of her appearance was the bandage she wore on her head. The elf Lucy wanted to know the name of her benefactor, but Pepperon was not even given the chance to introduce himself, as everything was said for him. His subordinate introduced him to everyone as the savior of the 7 races. Lala enthusiastically began to tell the residents of Ashirs about her king. She told everyone that he was the king of Glorious Septum. Also, Mr. Pepperon was the greatest hero in the world. The guy felt awkward with so many titles. The girl continued. Although they lost their country, they are trying to revive it with the help of their incredible talents. Lala informed the villagers that, as a first step, they came to the village of Ashirs in search of new subordinates. It was difficult for Pepperon to call the current place a village. Lucy, after Lala's words, began negotiations with her villagers, Ashirs. Soon the girl and her villagers asked the team for permission to bring all the people to the village of Ashirs under their command. Pepperon and his subordinates were stunned by the request of the elf Lucy. Their eyes widened in surprise. They could not believe the words they heard. The boy asked the girl again if all the residents of the village of Ashirs would really join him under his command. The elf Lucy agreed with the boy. It was true. Pepperon, of course, thought that only 2 or 3 people would join him. But he did not think that all the inhabitants would join. In the game, he was never asked to subjugate so many inhabitants. There were about 60 elves living in the village of Ashirze. With that many residents, his settlement would rise to level 2, and turn from a settlement into a village, which was good for them. Lucy was alarmed by the boy's long silence. She thought that they would become a hindrance to the rescuers. The boy, having come to his senses, did not agree with this. He told them that their village of Ashirs was quite far from the current Pepperon base. It would be difficult to maintain 2 villages separately, so the inhabitants of Ashirs would have to leave their place of residence. The guy wanted to know their opinion on this. It didn't matter to them. The village was in a place where it would be difficult for the BBC to find them. That's why they were able to avoid attacks for so long. But all unsuccessful races are attacked. Hearing the words of the elf Lucy, Lala and Fantasia were angry. Pepperon awkwardly told them that the group was unpleasant. He felt awkward because he was in it in the game. Lucy continued speaking sadly. No one could help them because the other races did not like them and attacked them unfairly. Even if the villagers stayed here, their enemies would return again, and it would be the end for everyone. The villagers of Ashirs were sad. The village chief Ashirs asked Lala about Mr. Pepperon. She wanted to know if the boy was really the savior of the 7 weak races. For Lala, it was true. After all, Mr. Pepperon was a great guy for the girl. He was the only hope for them, rejected by everyone. The girl remembered the guy when he was a king. The villagers of Ashirs looked at the boy with admiration. They also began to think that Pepperon was wonderful, and looked at him with bright eyes of delight. Pepperon felt awkward for a moment. The boy was confused by their attention. He noticed that Lala had the same reaction to him. Pepperon thought that all elves were no different, and were the same. Lala continued. She informed everyone that they would no longer be considered representatives of the 7 unsuccessful races, but residents of Glorious Septum, the land of the 7 first-class races. Lucy listened to Lala with delight. She was inspired by the girl's words because they could become a first-class race and not a failure. So the girl immediately fell to her knees. She addressed Pepperon again, but now Lucy addressed him as the head of the village. Lucy, bowing to him, asked the boy to take under his leadership all the inhabitants of the village of Ashirs. Together with her, all the inhabitants of the village also knelt down and bowed to their future master. The boy was surprised. Every resident of the village of Ashirs, although they had recently felt a terrible incident, now looked at their saviors with hope. They longed for a bright future for their race. Pepperon was shocked. He never thought that the search for subordinates would go well the first time. At this rate, the country would be restored in no time. He would do it faster than when he played the game. The boy happily informed everyone that from now on, every resident is a member of the Kingdom of Glorious Septum and its subordinates. Lala and Phanassia smiled happily at his words. Thus, he now had 62 elves at his disposal. Joyful cries continued to echo throughout the village of Ashirs. Everyone was happy to become members of the kingdom of Gloria Septim. 2 days later, shortly before Pepperon and the girls returned. It was daytime, cloudy outside, and everything was calm and quiet at the guy's base. Before his arrival, the excellent architecture of the base had already been built. A large number of wooden houses were erected in the shortest possible time. Also, Eri, a representative of the race of wise demons, was able to conduct research during this time. Stacks of documents and books were waiting on the table for the moment when Pepperon would read them. The boys' subordinates only had to wait for their king. Gus, a representative of the goblin race, was tired and pale. They had completed all the tasks given to them by Pepperon. Gus, Gobolt, and Eri look at the empty warehouse and wonder who ate it all. Gus is surprised that they were able to eat 2 weeks' worth of food in 2 days. He says that the king could be back any minute. Gobolt urges him to calm down. Eri asks him to consider this a test of his calm. Gus gets angry and says that they should have thought about it and not eaten all the supplies. The boy takes pieces of meat from the man and girl. They are indignant. Gobolt wonders if the girl knows some spell or scientific trick to increase the food supply. The girl says it's not magic or tricks. The other man says they have a few more days before the king returns. Gus says they'll manage somehow, then asks about the new subordinates. Mabo says they don't have to worry about that, because even if someone joins them, at their base level it will be a couple of people. He makes a guess that the king will forgive him, but the elven girl will be furious. The girl says that usually such situations are a collective responsibility. Gobolt agrees with her, and Nabo asks to be quiet. The friends hear a voice from behind saying that their comrades have returned. Nabo turns around and says that as soon as they remembered the rest of their comrades, they came. The girl and the boys notice a crowd of elves and are surprised. Phanassia is happy that they finally got there. The main character asks them for forgiveness for his long absence. Gus remembers his friend's words about the arrival of a couple of people. The other men are also surprised. Pepperon asks them what is wrong with them. Gus explains that they are surprised that they brought so many people. The protagonist says that luck has struck, and 62 elves from the village of Ashirs have agreed to join them. The elves bow and say that it is a pleasure to meet them. Nobo praises Mr. Pepperon for his good work. Gus also pretends to be glad to see them. They laugh nervously. Lala asks what happened while they were gone. Nobo and Gus are scared. The guy lies and says nothing happened. Eri turns to Pepperon and gives him the research he asked for. She says everything went well. The protagonist praises her for her good work. The girl giggles. Gus gets angry. Gobolt also addresses the protagonist and says that while he was away, no villains appeared, but he is always ready to protect their country. The guy says he said it well. Gus realizes that these two have good news and looks at Nobo and thinks about having to apologize to Nobo. The man laughs. He asks the protagonist to help him with the buildings. The guy agrees and assumes that he's falling off his feet. Gus is indignant to himself. Phanassia says that she wants to eat well and goes to the supplies. The guy gets scared. He asks her to wait and suggests that she wash up first. The girl says that it would be better to have a snack first. However, Gus insists and calls her dirty. Suddenly, a chest falls in front of him and he exclaims in surprise. The protagonist thinks to himself that they have become one level higher and the settlement has become a real village. He exclaims. He concludes that the system is the same as in the game. Venetia is happy about the treasure chest, and Gus says he was scared. In this treasure chest, they can find plans for the reconstruction of the main residence. The main residence is the very first building. By renovating this dwelling, they can upgrade it to the village headman's house, or the town headman's house in the city. If the dwelling rises to the level of a mansion, then the traveler will begin to show more interest, including new subordinates. And that means Gloria Septim will return to its former glory. Pepperon sighs and silently wishes for this to happen sooner. The elf suggests celebrating both the level up and the new friends. Phanassia exclaims joyfully, but Gas is still scared and tries to dissuade his friends. The protagonist notices this and turns to the girls, telling them to take the elves to their homes, because 2 days of travel have exhausted everyone. The girls agree and tell the elves to follow them. Gus breathes out calmly and the protagonist hurries to find out what's going on. The guy admits that they have no food at all. Pepperon exclaims in surprise. Gus apologizes. Eri says that he shouldn't have eaten so mindlessly. Gobble agrees with her. Gus yells that they are making fun of him. The protagonist calms everyone down and says that what has been done can't be undone, and they will still have to look for food, because there won't be enough for everyone. His subordinates ask him not to tell Lala about this. He thinks to himself that they fear Lala more than their master Pepperon. He asks them to go get food. They agree. The protagonist thinks to himself that Fanasea and Eri are real gluttons, although you wouldn't know it from looking at them. He also thinks that the problem will become a problem if they don't solve it in time. He says that they will manage somehow. However, the protagonist has completely forgotten about one thing. He has forgotten about those who will immediately appear upon learning that Gloria Septim has become a village. About a month later, the main character finds himself in the world of sword and magic. The lovely elves greet him and wish him a good morning. He responds in kind. Their base level has gone up. His subordinates adore him, and he is a good king. Their shack has now become a first-class home. Pepperon remembers that in the game, he was very happy when he got his first real home. They still have a lot to do. The main character sits under a tree. He says that sometimes you just need to be alone and think. It's hard for him to relax when someone is constantly walking under his ear. And even a king needs to be alone sometimes. Suddenly, someone calls out to him and he gets upset. The boy shouts that something strange is happening at the edge of the village, and the girl points her finger to the side and asks him to quickly go there. The main character yawns and assumes that these are bandits again, and that they need to quickly build a wall. Otherwise, there will be no peace from below. He hears shouts that they should call the leader. Pepperon doesn't understand what's going on. He comes out and says that he's the boss here. The guy is very surprised by what he sees. A man is standing in front of Lala and Gobolt. The elf asks if he is from the Spalding family and what they want from Mr. Pepperon. Gobolt says that he is pretending to be human. The knights behind him are indignant at his treatment of their commander-in-chief. The man says he doesn't care. He shouts that he is the commander of the order in service of the Spalding family, Lou Plasdar. Lou asks them if they know whose land they are on. The commander says it is the property of Marauda. The commander says it is the property of Marauda, Spalding, the head of the family. He also says that they cannot build a village here and calls on them to leave immediately. The protagonist thinks to himself that he has completely forgotten about them. He makes an assumption that it is about taxes. While they were a village, they didn't care much. But once they raised the level of the village, it made them angry. He understands that they want them to pay taxes for this plane, and if they refuse, they will send a huge army, and that will be the end of them. He calls the family conscientious taxpayers and thinks it would be better to follow their example. He recalls that in the game, the tax was 5% of the annual income. The girl from the elven race says that they don't care about the Spalding family, because they are from the unshakable kingdom of Gloria Septim. The protagonist does not understand what she is talking about and exclaims questioningly. The girl screams that if they want to get rid of them. The man finishes the sentence for her and makes it clear that in that case they will have to use force. Pepperon is indignant from behind. He thinks to himself that they are continuing to escalate the situation and that this is bad. They need to continue to develop the village. Otherwise, the situation will become much more complicated. He turns to his subordinates and tells them to stop. He apologizes for being late and introduces himself as Pepperon, the village elder. The man doesn't understand whether he is a child or a gnome. The guy says that the second option is correct. He realizes that at first glance, the village is full of elves. But if you look closely, you can see other races as well. The man wonders how they managed to gather so many unsuccessful races together. Gobolt is angry at his words. The protagonist calms him down. He asks the commander-in-chief what they wanted. He replies that this is the property of the Spalding family, and they must leave. The guy suggests sitting down at the negotiating table. The man asks him again and says that he has an idea. The land was originally empty. The protagonist asks why they don't start a village here for the benefit of the Spalding family. He asks if he's willing to swear allegiance to the family. Pepperon says that's what he meant. Lou agrees and asks his subordinates to bring him the scroll. Everyone gives it to him. He proclaims the beginning of negotiations. The protagonist, forgive him to wait. He suggests that they continue at his residence, as this is an important matter and they need to get comfortable and discuss everything calmly. Lu agrees and calls 2 soldiers to follow him, while the rest are ordered to wait. The protagonist tells his subordinates to wait here because he will talk to him himself. Lala says that Lu is going with security, so she should go with him. Pepperon answers negatively. He says that while they are negotiating, no one should approach the residence, and therefore he asks that this be conveyed to all those absent. The protagonist then thanks Lala. The girl is happy and says that she understood him. His words are ringing in her head. In fact, Pepperon just doesn't want them to be present at the negotiations where he is obviously in a losing position. He doesn't want to lose their loyalty. The man urges him to start negotiations, although he notes that the only thing left for them to discuss is the tax rate. The protagonist calls this a game. Lu says that 40% of all the harvest in this village will be paid to the Spalding family. In that case, they will not attack them or drive them out of the village. Pepperon is very surprised that he demands 40%. He thinks to himself that 40% is a lot and wonders where the generosity of the tax collectors is. He asks if there is a way to lower the tax. The man says that the village is full of inferior races that are useless in war. He thinks that they can only be used for agriculture. The protagonist thinks to himself that this is all because they are weak. He notices that things are going badly. Pepperon notes that they recently fought off bandits and agrees that they are weak, but says that they can still fight. Lu says that weaklings are weaklings and that they will never be useful in battle. The protagonist gets angry. He has a plan to destroy them all, but he talks himself out of it and notes that it sounds like Lala's idea. He calls himself to calm down. Lala sneezes outside. Eri assumes that she is sick. Suddenly, the protagonist gets the idea that it would be nice to have a track record to prove everything to him. He says there's some unresolved issue on the Spalding property that they can sort out. He offers a bet. If they solve the problem, the man agrees to lower the tax rate. Lu asks what he means. The main problem is that the Air Force is a direct threat to the security of the territory, and they probably have a shelter somewhere nearby, but they are unlikely to be able to solve this problem. The protagonist asks if he is willing to lower the stake if they find out the location of the Air Force base and destroy them. The man asks why he is offering something he cannot do. The protagonist proposes a tax rate of 10%. The man does not understand what he is talking about. Pepperon says that if they destroy their shelter, they must reduce the rate to 10%. The boy says that if they do this, they will be in open contact with the BBC, which is a risk they are willing to take, and it is worth the payoff. He asks the man how he likes the idea. Lu laughs but agrees, calling it interesting. The protagonist asks if he is being honest. He answers positively. He gives them a month to do it and says that if they fail, the tax rate will be 50%. Pepperon is surprised by such a large bet. The man says that if you act half-heartedly and just provoke their anger, they will start to raid more. He explains that they are asking the weakest races to deal with them, and this leads to a much greater risk than theirs. The man asks if he is confident in his strength and reminds him of the 40% tax. The young man is indignant and asks him to wait, asking if they can help with something else. The man says that they don't have enough problems to lower the tax rate. The protagonist thinks to himself about what they should do, because he thought that it would be possible to solve some other problems that do not concern the Air Force in exchange for a lower rate. They have no choice but to act. However, the protagonist understands that no matter what their level, they will not be able to destroy the Air Force shelter just like that. The man asks him if he is ready. The guy asks for a minute and says that he will come back later and answer. Lu disagrees and says he'll have to decide right here and now. The guy is silent and then exhales. He's forced to agree and accept the terms. The man wishes him luck in developing his village and paying his taxes, and says he is looking forward to hearing about how things are going with the Air Force base. The boy watches the troops leave. He falls on the bed and says that he has no idea how to explain all this to the others. Pepperon says that this is all to reduce the tax from 40 to 10%. The guy suggests that he will be considered crazy and his reputation will be ruined. He also remembers that the elves of Arshers were previously attacked by the Air Force and assumes that they will want revenge, but realizes that this looks like coercion. He suggests that this could be described as a mission to liberate 7 times from the oppression of the Air Force. The protagonist sighs heavily. The elven girl sighs as well. Eri asks the girl about her heavy sighs and says that it is not like her. Elphika says that everything is fine. The demon is about to leave and says that she understands everything. Lala stops her. Her friend asks what's wrong with her. The girl says that she already knows everything and then shouts that she wants to be more useful to Mr. Pepperon. Eri says that everything seems fine now. However, the girl denies this and says that this is not enough. She recalls that earlier, after the meeting with the commander-in-chief, she tried to stay with Mr. Pepperon, but he told her to leave him for a while. Lala is upset that Mr. Pepperon has some problems and she can't help him at all, and feels ashamed and disappointed. Eri says that nothing is expected of her. The girl doesn't understand what she is talking about. The demon suggests that it is not about her and says that there is always someone next to Mr. Pepperon, and sometimes he wants to be alone to think. The girl also tells her not to stress, and Mr. Pepperon will turn to her when he needs her help. Elphika is happy with her words and thanks her, saying that she will stop whining and do everything in her power. Eri waves the girl after him and thinks to herself that she should be more restrained. Lala runs forward and thinks to herself that she will continue to serve him. Suddenly, she is called out. The elf girl asks what happened. The girl says that things are bad. She's breathing heavily. The elf girl says with horror on her face that her sister was kidnapped by the Air Force. The girl asks what they need to do and whether they should tell Mr. Pepperon everything. Lala asks Lucy to calm down and says that the king is busy now. She asks her to let her tell him everything. Lucy tells that this morning the elven girl and her friends went to play in the forest. Some time ago, one of the boys asks his friends if they went too far. His girlfriend agrees with him and says that it can be dangerous. The girl from the elven race says that everything is fine and their sister allowed them. The boy is interested in what they will do if monsters appear. The girl is scared by his thoughts about monsters. Their friend says that there are no strong monsters in this forest, and therefore it is safe. She says that she heard that colored rabbits live here, and this is a very rare species. Her friend asks her again. The girl from the elven race thinks that Pepperon will probably be happy if they bring him home to him. Suddenly, the girl notices one of them and asks her friends to look there. She calls him Cutie, and the other girl asks how they will catch him. Elphika takes it upon herself and goes out to the rabbit and asks him to come to her. The animal slowly goes and touches her hand with his nose. Reese encourages him not to be afraid. The rabbit jumps on her. She laughs and says it tickles and that they seem to be friends. The second girl says she wants to hug him too. The boy notices another one. Suddenly, someone else appears in the clearing. The children turn around and see men. One of them asks what they are doing here. He tramples the bunny. The boy realizes it is the Air Force. The girl asks where they are from. The man says that such youngsters will make excellent servants. The second man agrees with his comrade and says that such youngsters can be taught many things. One of the children steps forward and says that she will deal with them. She asks her friends to return to the village and tell the ruler and the others about everything. Her friends doubt it, but the elven girl screams for them to run away. The children agree and run to the village, saying that they will call for help. One of the men shouts at them not to let them go. The girl looks at them resolutely, but trembles. The bandit tells her not to be afraid, because the place they are going to is a real paradise. The men laugh. Currently, only the knife of the elven girl is lying in that same place. They realize that this is where the girl was kidnapped. Lala asks them if they are sure it was the Air Force. They respond positively and say that they were wearing the same bandanas as the people who attacked their village. Nabo says that things are bad. Gobolt agrees and suggests that they sell her into slavery or work her to death. Lucy exclaims questioningly. She grabs Lala and asks her to save her sister. The girl agrees with her and says that they will go save her right away. Gobolt asks her to wait and says that they must inform the king about this. Lala is sure he would have supported them. Gus isn't so sure. He says Mr. Pepperon once told him the Air Force is not the most pleasant company, and it's one thing to fight on their own territory, but quite another to break into their lair. He says that Mr. Pepperon should decide something like this. Lucy is disappointed and asks what will happen to Reese. Seeing this, Gus makes it clear that he is sure that Mr. Pepperon will be happy to help in any case. Elphika agrees, but to say that it is stupid to even guess what the Lord is thinking. But in any case, she thinks that they should return to the village and ask for his help. The girl agrees with her. Lucy cries silently. She picks up the knife that her sister held and thinks about the pepperoni. The girl remembers her sister and hopes for the best. The protagonist suggests that everyone save their smaller brothers from Gloria Septim and destroy the Air Force shelter. The guy crumples the sheet of paper and says that this won't work because it's too crooked. He mentions that they're going to destroy their secret hideouts, and he can't think of anything. The guy suggests that it should be something pompous. Pepperon remembers Lou and wishes he had at least one word like him. He rehearses, saying that now they will destroy the Air Force shelter. The guy introduces himself as Lala and asks himself why they should do this, and then answers himself that there is no reason, but they still have to do it. He imagines the girl rushing forward, but he understands the futility of this and gets angry, not understanding how to do it. Suddenly, he notices movement outside the window. He wonders why it is so noisy outside, and does not understand why everyone is gathered under his window. Lala says that she knows he is busy, but asks him to talk to them about something. The protagonist assumes that they found out about the tax rate and gets scared. There is no other reason why they could have gathered for some conversation. He hears the anger in their voices and becomes even more frightened. He's embarrassed, but he wants to throw the squeamishness to the wind and uses royal privileges by ordering them to destroy the RAF hideout. That way they'll get 10% of the tax rate. He is Pepperon, the king of Gloria Septim, and if he said it, he will do it. Lala tries to say something, but the protagonist interrupts her and asks everyone to listen to him. He says that they will invade the Air Force hordes, and they themselves know why, and for what reason. He shouts that they must stand up for their future, and now go and prepare for war. All the people are silent. He thinks to himself that they may not like it, but they will not regret anything. Lucy cries and says that he knows everything. The protagonist does not understand what she is talking about. The girl thanks him very sincerely. The king still does not understand what she is talking about. The people shout that their king is their savior and support Pepperon. Lala believes that Mr. Pepperon is right, and they should start preparing for war to save Reese, who was kidnapped by the Black Company. The protagonist asks her again to himself. He remembers that Reese is the sister of Lucy, the former head of Arshears, and remembers her as a friendly elf. They even played together sometimes. The guy assumes that the Air Force wants to kill the girl in revenge for what happened in the village. However, they took care of all the bodies, and the enemies were not supposed to know that they did it. In the end, the protagonist thinks that this is very convenient. He understands that he does not need to explain anything, and his popularity has only increased. He wants to call people to save her and destroy the Black Company base, goes to the residence and says that it is time to make a plan. The king orders Lala and the others to follow him. The people agree with him. In the Spalding territory, in the Alafazarate Empire, there is a place. A girl of the elven race slowly wakes up. Her whole body hurts. She remembers how the guys from the Black Company treated her badly. She gives in to the question of her whereabouts. Someone greets her, calling her new. The figure behind her is annoyed that they brought an elf again and says they could have brought a better race for once. A girl from the elven race asks where they are. The girl answers that this is the hideout of the Black Company. Reese assumes that she was also kidnapped. She answers positively and says that they attacked her village and she was dragged here. It also mentions that everyone who is with her is already dead. The girl says that they don't even let you rest and make you work until you're half dead, and that once you get here, you can say goodbye to the outside world. She tells the girl that she's in hell. The girl from the elfin race is scared. Reese says she needs to get out of here, but the stranger laughs and calls her stupid. She points to the chain on her leg. The girl asks who she is. The stranger says that if she asks about something by name, she should introduce herself first. The girl says she is Reese. The girl introduces herself as Pan's dwarf and says she is also from a lower race. The dwarf girl tells her to calm down and says that soon she will start working and there will be no time for suffering. Reese asks what they are making her do. Pan replies that they are in a mine, and the Air Force is capturing people and making them work for free. She asks her if she knows what a blasting rock is. She asks again, making it clear that she doesn't know. The girl explains that it is a stone that explodes when strongly irritated and is often used to make weapons. It's listed as a dangerous mineral, so only a few people from Spalding are allowed to mine it. But the people from the Black Company don't care. The girl says that the services are easily replaced, and here they either die in an explosion or die from overwork. However, the dwarf girl smiles and also says that they will have time to be friends for a while before they die. The elf girl is very scared and looks at her silently. In the village, they discuss the plan. To summarize, he says he wants Phoenicia and the Pochi to take over the guards at the entrance, get to the alarm system, and disable it if they can. The two agree. The protagonist then continues and says that when the security inside the shelter is weakened, Lala and Eri will sneak in through the eastern entrance and rescue Reese by destroying the shelter. The subordinates agree with him. He orders the Nobos and the elves to protect the base. He says he's sorry they can't go with them, but they'll do their best to take care of their home. Nas turns to Mr. Pepperon. He says that their main mission is to rescue Reese and expresses his confusion as to why they can't just leave as soon as the rescue mission is complete without destroying the shelter. The protagonist is nervous, not knowing what to say. The girl from the elf race furiously asks him what he's saying. She thinks that these are the monsters who destroyed their village, and they can't just take the girl and forget about it. The girl says that if you're going to fight them, you're going to have to do it thoroughly. Gus says that he understands and that he was just curious. The protagonist apologizes to Gus in his mind and thinks that he would be on his side if it weren't for the tax rates. He looks at the crowd in bewilderment as they shout for the Air Force to be destroyed. He says that if everyone is ready, they can begin. The people loudly agree with him. At the Black Company hideout, a man says it's time for them to get to work. He tells the girl to get up and move. The bandit tells her to move forward. The elven girl thinks to herself that there are only weak races here, and they were all kidnapped. She does not notice her new friend, and wonders where the dwarven girl is now. Suddenly, everyone is ordered to stop. The bandit tells them to let him through. The man yells at the girl, angry that she is watching and not working. Reese says he doesn't know what to do with her. The man tells her that since she is new, she should watch how the others work and learn from them. He also adds that if she fails and makes a mistake, she will die. These men are the leader of the group, Pursed. The girl doesn't understand why they don't pay a little more attention to her training. She understands that she needs to look for light red areas on the rocks, but she doesn't understand whether she should hit the dark or light ones. She thinks to herself that she should try anyway, and reminds herself to avoid the light red areas. Suddenly, something explodes behind her. She turns around and is horrified to see bodies. One of the men yells at them not to wrap him up, while the other says there is no point and orders them to feed the body to the monsters outside. He says that it is better to die from overwork, and that death from a bomb is unavoidable. The girl asks what is wrong with them. She is very angry and screams that they do not know what life is. The girl from the elven race does not understand how one can treat a living being like that. Perm answers her, saying that everything is simple and they are just tools, instruments. They cannot even be sold, and they are nothing more than a waste product. He believes that they are unworthy of life and should return to work. The girl is angry at him for his rudeness and says that they are not tools and were not born to be used by scoundrels like him. He says she's brazen and looks like she needs to be taught a lesson. He reaches out to her with his hand, but suddenly he is called out, but turns around and sees his new acquaintance, Panna. She, with a smile on her face, says that they will put everything in its place for her. The man says that she has already gotten on his nerves. The girl smiles and reminds him that he himself said that he likes it when tools know their business. The girl just wants to give instructions. Prest reluctantly agrees and orders her to explain to the girl why she's here. The girl thanks him. They walk down a dark corridor. Reese asks her what is going on here. Panna tells her to shut up and go. She stands near the door and tells her to go inside. The girl doesn't understand, but goes inside. The girl doesn't understand, but goes inside. She sees a punishment room. The girl is very surprised and asks what she is doing. The dwarf girl tells her that she will not let her out until she can make sure that she is really just a working tool. Reese asks her not to be stupid and say that she is not a tool. The girl explains to her that she has two options: either stay here and let her torture her, or lie and admit that she is a tool. She says that they like to torture people, but if she has to, she can't do anything about it. The girl says that she would never call herself something like that. The girl from the dwarf race tells the girl that she can't fix anything. She won't be able to convince them and get them all out of here. The elven girl disagrees and says that if they work together, they can. But the dwarven girl understands that it's impossible and says that they can listen to them and live longer or die now. Reese is disappointed, but admits that this is just a workforce for them. The dwarven girl calls it a smart choice. Sometime later, she turns to Finger and happily informs him that the lesson has been learned. The man says they look too cheerful. The dwarf girl says Reese's nerves immediately gave out when she saw the camera. Panna begins to theatrically imitate her. She grimaces and asks for forgiveness, and with fear on her face says that she will do everything she says. She immediately turns around and says with a smile on her face that the girl said to do whatever he tells her to do. Reese doesn't like this. Prest laughs and says that she is a coward, asking her who she is. The girl is silent at first, but then, overcoming herself, says that she is a tool. The girl from the elven race cries. The head of the black company says that this is excellent, and orders her to get to work quickly and perform her duties with dignity. He leaves and calls the lady to follow him. She agrees and follows him. After some time, the dwarf girl tells the girl that she is very tired, but thinks that the day went well and she is happy. The dwarf girl hopes that her new friend has learned her lesson. She puts bread in her hand. The girl reaches for it, but Panna says that Purse gave her something and she decided to share it with her because they are neighbors. The girl turns away and says that she doesn't care because she doesn't need anything from him. Panna says that she doesn't care who gave it to her because it's just bread. The girl asks her new friend why she agreed to teach her and assumes that she just wants to help her. However, the dwarf girl laughs. Elphica does not understand her. The girl says that there is no point in helping her and that she was simply flirting with Finger. The girl is confused and does not understand what she is talking about. The girl from the dwarf race explains that he is the one who runs this shelter, and if he likes it, he can pull her out of slavery in the mine into the shelter, and there, she just needs to clean up and bring food. The girl says that if you behave very well, you can even become an official member of the Air Force. The girl from the elven race exclaims questioningly. She wonders if her friend wants to join the ranks of these monsters. The dwarf girl doesn't understand what the problem is and asks if she wants the same. The girl replies in the negative and says that she doesn't want to be one of those who treat people like things. The girl says that if they continue to work in the mines, they will simply explode or die of exhaustion. She does not understand how a girl can say such things. The girl from the elven race says that she is not talking about this and asks if she has any pride. Suddenly, Panna remembers her past. Finger's cruel voice sounds in her head about them being a workforce and ordinary servants. A picture appears before her eyes where a little girl screams that dwarves also have pride. The boy agrees and says that they won't get away with it. The man screams that they will die in that case. Then the dwarf girl remembers only the screams. She is silent, but then laughs and says that this approach won't work for them if they want to survive. The girl says that despite being a gnome, she is not quite like Mr. Pepperon. Panna asks her again, not understanding who she is talking about. She wonders if he is a gnome. The girl from the elven race answers positively. The girl is sure that Mr. Pepperon will come to their aid and kill them all. The girl from the gnome race does not understand why a gnome would come to such a place. The girl is angry and says that she should not mock Mr. Pepperon. Panna says that she knows the weaknesses of the gnomes best, and being a weak race, they need to be as smart as she is to survive. The girl shouts that Pepperon is very strong. The girl waves her off and agrees. At Pepperon's residence, the protagonist sneezes. They ask him if he's okay, but he says yes and says it's cool outside. Pepperon and his subordinates are ready. The protagonist calls everyone to go forward to the Air Force shelter. 2 days have passed since the mission of Pepperon and their team began. Lala asks the protagonist how long it will take to get to the shelter. He answers that it should be somewhere nearby. The girl hopes that the elven girl is okay. Phoenicia suggests that they determine the leader using a game of rock, paper, scissors. Gorbolt says that this is nonsense because he is the team captain. He says that she definitely can't command. However, Phoenicia disagrees and says that she was the one who destroyed the last shelter. Lala gets angry at them and tells them that they should think about Reese and not stupid things. Phoenicia and the Gobold agree. About an hour before the arrival of the protagonist and his company at the hideout of the Black Company. The girl says to herself that she can no longer do this and hopes to return to her friends soon. She is very exhausted and tired. From the second day, Reese was forced to participate in the extraction of minerals. The work was very hard and long, and the fear of blowing herself up at any moment exhausted her not only physically, but also psychologically. Suddenly, the lady says that it is high time. Reese can't see what she is doing because she is sitting with her back to her. The girl stands up and says that she has been waiting for this moment for a long time. The girl behind her hears a click. The dwarf girl turns around and shows her the removed shackles. She says that she will leave here tonight. The girl shows her friend the keys to the cell and shackles. The elf girl asks her where she got them from. Panna explains that she stole them from Purst. It took her a lot of effort, but she did it. The girl says that she thought that she really obeyed the Air Force and wanted to be with them. She laughs loudly and says that she was pretending. The dwarf girl says that she pretended to be obedient. They started to like her, and then they let her walk around the shelter with them and told her everything about the internal structure. The elf girl asks to take her with them. The dwarf girl asks her again and says that her new friend is very tired and she won't be able to drag her along by force. Reese says that she's not so tired that she can't move. She says that she is an excellent swordsman and if there is a fight, she will definitely come in handy. The dwarf girl says that this is too confident a statement for someone who was captured and imprisoned. The girl is a little embarrassed. A dwarf girl throws her keys and says that if this bunch of keys contains the key to her shackles, she will take it with her. The girl says that they are going to escape from here and clarifies about the plan. The dwarf girl says that they need to visit the registration room first. Reese wonders what it is. The dwarf explains that there are guard golems patrolling the base, and if they see them, it's the end for them. The girl says that if they go to the reception and register as members of the Black Company, they will not be touched. She also says that every evening after the lights go out, Prest and the others drink in the control room, so the security will be relaxed. The girl from the elven race removes the shackles from her leg and rejoices. The girl says that if they can lure the golem out, then they will succeed. The girl does not understand why her friend delayed her escape if she knows so much. The dwarf girl tries to explain something, but the girl assumes that she just wanted to run away with her friend. To this statement, the dwarf girl screams, asking what she is talking about. She says that she was going to leave alone, but the elf girl insisted that she take her with her, so she just had to. The elf girl tells the girl that she is very lonely and smiles. The girl says that she will take her back if she does not stop talking. Reese laughs and apologizes to her and asks her to go quickly to the reception room. She is still angry. They run through the corridors. Reese asks if she knows where they are going. The dwarf girl answers positively and says that it is not far from here. Suddenly, the elf hears some sounds. She asks what the noise is. Her friend notes that these are the steps of a golem. The dwarf girl says that he is rushing straight here. The girl asks what they should do since they can find them. The dwarf girl curses, but notices a door ahead. The golem passes by. The friends hide behind the door. The girl from the elven race says that it was very close. The girl from the dwarven race agrees and says that they came across an empty room at the right time and in the right place. She also says that they will have to sit here. The girl from the elven race notices something. The girl from the dwarven race says that these golems are much more disgusting than she thought, and with this success morning will come faster than they get there. Reese calls out to the girl several times, but she does not hear. The girl says that they should go to the reception room. She's interrupted by another appeal from Reese. The girl from the dwarf race asks why she's making noise and urges her not to disturb her thinking. They see a large golem in front of them and are frightened. The northern entrance to the Air Force shelter. The protagonist says that here they will split into two groups, as previously planned. He orders Post and Fantasia to go inside in a minute. He also says that as soon as the alarm sounds, they will go in after him. Anasia and Pochi agree. Lala turns to them and says she's counting on them. Fanaja and Gobel both tell her to leave it to them. The girl tells her friend that before they go in, they need to determine the captain. The man says that he will not play a game called Rock, Paper, Scissors with her. Fantasia concludes that he is afraid of losing to her in such a simple game. Gobel doesn't understand what she's talking about at first, but then he agrees and says that whoever wins 3 times will be in charge and he won't say a word against it. The girl agrees. The east entrance to the Air Force shelter. Pepperon orders Gus to open the door. He agrees and gets to work. He tells them that once they are inside, they should go to the servants' chambers and rescue Reese. The protagonist also says that once she is safe, they can go to the reception room and disable the security system. Lala agrees with him. He says that now all they have to do is make sure he doesn't see them and then everything will be fine. Lala asks him who he means. Pepperon explains to her that the bouncer Sin Triad is in that cell. The elf and the dwarf are very scared. They tiptoe out of the room. The elf girl says that the girl said that this room was empty. She sincerely apologizes and explains to her that she did not know that the bouncer Sin was in this room. She says that in any case they need to leave here, and if he finds them, that's the end of them. The girl notices a cockroach on the floor and starts screaming. The girl from the elven race tries to close her mouth and calms her down, saying that it's just a cockroach. Suddenly, a door opens behind them and Bouncer Sin comes out of the room. The girls think they are finished. At this time, Pepperon's team is at the eastern entrance. He notices the alarm. He praises Pochi and urges them to move forward. The girls are very scared, but Sin turns and says something about a sign of superiority. He goes in the opposite direction from them. The girl from the elven race, not believing, says that they are saved. The girl from the dwarven race still does not believe it. North entrance, orientation group, where Pochi and Phoenicia are. They shout out the words of the game, rock, paper, scissors. Pochi shows scissors and Phoenicia shows rock. She is happy that she has chosen and is now captain. Gobolt in the background calms himself down and says that it is only for this one time, and that he is in fact the real captain of Gloria Septim. She calls him a subordinate and orders him to follow his commander-in-chief. Pochi is indignant to himself. Phoenicia joyfully calls for him to move forward. Suddenly, the alarm works. The man does not understand why the alarm worked because no one found anyone. Phoenicia assumes that Pepperon and the others dealt with it before them. Gobolt reminds her that they said they would only enter if the alarm was raised. The girl says that in that case they will just enter. There is no point in them staying here. She again urges them to move forward. Suddenly, someone calls out to them. One of the bandits asks if they are their servants. He wonders what they are doing here. Gobolt smirks and calls him a dog. He urges the girl not to slow down. She exclaims questioningly. The man says that he is declaring a hunt for him. The bandit asks who he is declaring a hunt for. The girl says that it is unfair because she does not feel like a captain at all. Phoenicia shouts at the others, saying that she is the captain here, and it is the captain's job to hunt the enemy. The man tells her that the captain has no need to deal with this small-time bandit, and that such matters are best left to his subordinates. The girl says she understands and runs ahead. She shouts that as captain she should be the first to enter the shelter and leaves it for the rest. The bandit says they have no idea what they're getting into. The man yells that she won't just leave. The girl dodges his attack and the Gobolt repels it. Phoenicia asks the man what she should do when she seems to be inside. He says he doesn't know and she should just go. The girl agrees and enters the Air Force hideout. The bandit looks around and clicks his tongue. He jumps back and says that they just ran out of Harpy and Kobold servants, so they can become their new servants. Pochi says that they have only one boss, Mr. Pepperon, and they will obey only him. The bandit says that the kobolds are just a bunch of windbags. He laughs at the man's decision to hunt him and suggests starting with frogs. Pochi asks him again and shouts that he definitely doesn't need that. They fly at each other, preparing to attack. In one of the tunnels, a girl asks him what he was doing there. She is surprised that he let them go. This guy does not work for a black company. He is just a bouncer and a warrior who is here to fight the good guys. She says that judging by the way he rushed there, it seems there is another uninvited guest somewhere. The girl makes a guess that it could be Mr. Pepperon and the guys. The girl from the dwarf race says that she keeps talking about it. The girl thinks that there is no need for him to come here, but the elven girl is angry because she is making fun of Mr. Pepperon again. The dwarven girl says that the registration room is somewhere around here. She suggests ending this before the golem finds them. Otherwise, they are finished. At this moment, the team of the main character, Lotta, Gus, and Aerie, rushes along the corridors. The main character says that the dungeon with the bow is located just behind the corridor ahead and along the road. He understands that it is very soon. He thinks to himself that if he is the same as the hum he is in this hall. Suddenly, the main character stops. He understands that the signs ahead are false and the first blow will come from behind. Sin attacks from behind, but the protagonist repels the attack without even looking at the enemy. The elf girl turns to Pepperon with concern. He tells them that he can handle it himself and orders them to get to the servants' chambers. The girl understands him and asks him to take care of himself. Shin laughs and says that he never thought that someone could stop his attack from behind. The protagonist says that this is a technique that he has used many times, so he is used to it. The bouncer is sure that he will never forget the meeting with such a strong opponent as him. The protagonist says that he has never seen such people in his world before. But they did not have any clashes even on game days. The guy says with a smile on his face that he has fought in over 100 battles. His opponent exclaims and says that he is interested. He admits that the main character is his strongest opponent in a long time. He uses the power-up and changes form. The protagonist does not understand what is happening and assumes that he is going to use this technique. Shin uses the techniques Kurenai, Secret of the Six Swords, and Deadly Blades. He says that it is a strong attack that has a 40% chance of hitting the target if the damage is more than a certain amount, and that it is almost impossible to avoid. And if you get hit by it, your health will be absorbed and the game will end. The protagonist smirks and says that with such a strong technique, the only way to defeat him is a storm. He uses another strong technique. Shin says that this is nonsense and that he can't be stopped by ice magic. Suddenly, his limbs freeze and turn into ice. The protagonist says that if you strike first and make your opponent bleed, then the ice attributes will be a very effective strategy. He discovered it around the 50th battle. Pepperon approaches his opponent, holds his sword to his throat, and says it's game over. Shin laughs, praising him, and suggests they end it. The boy agrees. The dwarf girl and Reese run through the corridors. The girls finally find the reception room. The dwarf girl is happy and calls them inside. The girl agrees. They open the door and see Finger. He greets Penu and says that he came here in the middle of the night to see what all the fuss was about. The girl is very surprised. The man is surprised that it was she who arranged all this. A dwarf girl asks him why he is here. He says that their haste played a cruel joke on them. Now he understands that her influencing tale was just a trick she used to carry out her plan. The dwarf girl is shocked. The elf girl calls out to her from behind and points at the golem. The girl gets angry and says they have gone too far. The man approaches her and says he feels sick at the thought that the servant tried to surpass him. He calls the girl stupid and hits her. The girl from the elven race screams excitedly. Finger goes to her and says he will kill them both. The girl from the dwarf race comes up with a plan. She turns to him. He turns around and sees the girl with explosive stones. She says it was a mistake for him to leave the stones in his room and threatens to blow everything up if he moves. Press laughs and says she will die too if she does that. The girl screams that she would rather die with him than by his hand. The man tells her to do it if she has the courage. The girl says that the truth will blow up the stone. The elven girl screams at her to stop, but she lowers her hand. She silently apologizes to Reese for dragging her into all of this. She is glad that they will not be able to see each other again, but on the other side. She throws a rock on the floor, but nothing happens. The girl is surprised that it didn't explode. The dwarf girl is also amazed. The man laughs and wonders if she really thought they weren't taking any safety precautions when surrounded by explosive rocks. He shows the ring and says that these are their measures. This finger helps to defuse all explosive stones in a radius of 5 millis around it. Only he, the leader of the organization, is allowed to have it. Finger says that as long as he wears it, he has nothing to fear, and it can also be used to detonate explosives under a small load, such as an explosive rock in the girl's hands. The man gives her the finger, and the rock explodes in her hand. Finger laughs and says he's sure it's not pleasant, but he adjusted it so it wouldn't rip her arm off. The girl from the elven race runs up to the wounded girl. The man says that he is not one of those who trust people 100%, but he trusted the lady 50%, and she betrayed that trust. Finger makes her understand that she will not die so easily. At this time, the main character and Sin are standing in the same pose. The bandit asks the main character what is wrong. He thinks to himself that, in the game, if he is killed, the leader of the base will kill them all along the way. He wonders what will happen if he is left alive. After considering all possible scenarios, he can say that in 9 out of 10 of them, things will go very badly. He wonders if he should use trial and error, as the situation is different from the old gaming days. The boy turns away from him and walks away. He thinks to himself that he hasn't tried to conquer the game for a long time. Sen asks him what he's doing. Pepperon tells him that he has to try something, and he's not going to beat him. The main character says that the ice will melt in an hour, and then he will be able to do whatever he wants. The bandit does not understand him. The guy says that he thought during the game that when he comes from behind, he gets scared. and encourages him to attack from the front. The protagonist leaves, saying goodbye beforehand. Sin is left alone and, smiling, calls him a funny gnome. The protagonist runs to the registration room. He decided to leave the prison to Lael and the others. Anasia runs down the hallway and is surprised that there are no enemies anywhere. She looks around the corner and sees a full prison. The girl makes the assumption that Reese must be somewhere here. She breaks the prison bars and, smiling, asks if Reese is there. One of the prisoners asks who she is. The girl says that she is Phoenicia, the captain of Gloria Septim. She asks if the girl knows an elf named Reese. The prisoner says that she is not in this dungeon. Phoenicia offers to take her, but remembers that she needs to find the key to the dungeon. She ponders where she can get it from. The girl says that she will help them and they should hold on. She thought, why not make a passage without a key? The girl begins to break the wall. At this time, Press says that it is time to finish with the couple once and for all. He says that they will choose another elf friend. The girl from the elven race begs him to forgive them. The man swings at the girl and says goodbye to her. The girl from the elven race thinks about Pepperon. Suddenly, the main character bursts into the room. He saves the girl at the last moment. Everyone else is surprised. The girl from the elven race exclaims joyfully, turning to Mr. Pepperon. The guy is glad that the girl is okay and apologizes for the fact that they took so long. The guy is surprised that the girl is a dwarf and says that he has not seen his relatives for 100 years. The girl asks herself if it is a Pepperon. The protagonist turns to Purst. The man is surprised that he knows his name. He asks who he is. The guy explains that he is the king of Gloria Septim, a Pepperon. The protagonist gets into a fighting stance. He looks at him resolutely and says that they will forgive him for interfering in the affairs of his friends and his people. The man does not understand what the king of the Zadripanov state needed from him. The main character says that he came to take his subject named Rice, and at the same time to destroy him and free all the people he captured. Finger calls him a gnome and shouts in rage that he can only dream of this. He reaches out to him, but the protagonist cuts it off. The gnome girl and the elf girl are surprised by this. The man writhes in pain. The protagonist says that he caused the same pain to his servants. The man looks at him furiously. The guy says that for the suffering he brought to Reese and his kin, he will pay with his life. Suddenly the girl stops him and asks him to listen. She says something that this man in front of him treated them like things, really. People died before her eyes from his hand, and his cruelty knows no bounds. However, the elf says that this is why, if he just kills him, it will make him look like the BBC. The dwarf girl asks her what she is saying and explains that if this man dies, they will be doing the world a favor. The girl agrees with her, but still says that she thinks that murder is not an option. The protagonist recalls that when he was a player, he also had similar thoughts when his subordinates killed enemies on his orders. Now that the game has become a reality, it seems his subjects are starting to think about it too. He thinks that if the number of his subjects grows, he will not be able to solve problems using the same methods as before. The girl bows and says that she is very sorry because she dared to impose her opinion on him. The protagonist, on the contrary, says that the girl is right. They are Gloria Septim, and even if they are oppressed, they must not forget about mercy to their opponents. He says that this time they will spare his life at the request of Reese and take him to the estate of the Spaulding family. Lala runs down the hall with the others, asking where the cages are. If they don't hurry, Reese might get hurt. Gus says that's why he suggested turning back before they got completely lost. The girl shouts that they are Gloria Septim and there is no word in their vocabulary to turn back. Gus is not sure and agrees with her. Erie calls on the two of them to be quiet. One of the bandits asks what is going on. Another turns to the captive and asks who did this. The girl says that she herself doesn't really know. Erie peeks in and says that this is probably the servants' cell. Gus realizes that these thugs are from the Black Company and wonders why the cell is broken. The guy says that they need to assess the situation first. He does not understand where Lala is. Erie points forward. Lala kicks the thug and asks where Reese is. The girl doesn't understand how they dared and demands to know where she is. Gus says that they should have released all the servants first, and Erie says that she should have treated their wounds. The protagonist asks the girls why they are in the registration room. The dwarf girl answers him by saying that she and Reese were trying to escape from the Air Force. Now the boy understands why the alarm was raised. He assumes that it happened because of them. The girl from the elven race confirms his words and apologizes. The protagonist says that there's no need for apologies here, because it is even for the best. If they wait here, both Golems and Air Force forces will come running here, and they will only deal with everyone faster. He asks the girl her name. The dwarf girl asks if she was asked a question and introduces herself as Panna. Pepperon thanks her for trying to save Reese. The girl thinks to herself that he is the same dwarf as she is, but he defeated Purst with one blow. She understands that the girl from the elven race was right, and he is really strong. She also notices his handsome appearance and blushes a little. Pepperon notices that the girl has turned red. He asks if she is okay and assumes that she has a fever. The guy puts his hand on her forehead to check. The girl turns even redder, exclaiming questioningly. She says that she doesn't understand what heat we're talking about and that she's fine. The protagonist denies it and says that's not what he meant. Suddenly, Purst stands up from behind. He laughs. The protagonist turns to him and notices a hand with a ring in his hand. The head of the Black Company says that these weak races are dear to him. Then he will make him regret that he ever got involved with them. The protagonist is surprised that he can move and gets scared. However, Fantasia hits him with a warlike cry. The dwarf and the girl from the elven race are perplexed. The protagonist is surprised by Fantasia's appearance here. The girl says that she was looking for the key to the cells here and found them. She rushes to hug Reese and says that they couldn't find her, and she is glad that she is safe. The girl is also very happy. The protagonist asks what happened to Pochi. Fantasia says that he is her subordinate, so he is a small fry, and she is the commander, and that is why she came here. The protagonist is confused, but says that he understood her. The girl says that she killed a lot of enemies on the way here, and there is only one boss left. The guy explains to her that the one she just defeated is the Agitord. The girl does not believe him and asks him again, but then rejoices and says that the mission is completed. Manhua asks why she is even needed here. Panna is surprised that she is so happy. The girl from the elven race admires her and says that she is amazing. Since they are already finished here, Pepperon suggests that they meet Lala and the others. The girls agree. Gobolt on the street says that it's all boring, and he ended up with a small fry. He sits on his fallen opponent and says that weak dogs whine the loudest, but he doesn't even have the strength for that. He says it's time for him to see how things are going inside. In the dungeon itself, Gus asks if that's all. He's surprised that their friend is nowhere to be seen. The elf girl calls Reese by name, hoping she'll hear. 4 figures suddenly appear at the end of the hallway. An elven girl calls out to Lala. Lala turns around and sees Reese and Pepperon. She's glad that they are okay. Gus notices that Pepperon has found Lucy's little sister. The protagonist says it's a long story and asks if they finished freeing the servants. Gus is embarrassed and says they've released everyone and treated their wounds, but they haven't been fed for a long time and are weak. The protagonist says that this can be fixed and orders to first take everyone outside and then look for something in the local food warehouse. He offers to take the valuables for himself. The dwarf girl points at herself and says that she knows this place well, because she did different jobs and cleaned here. The protagonist asks her to accompany everyone in this case. The girl suggests relying on her. Lala gets angry. She approaches the girl and asks how she dares to talk to Mr. Pepperon like that. She says that her being of the same race as him doesn't mean anything. The girl says, "I won't seduce him." The gnome girl is also angry and shouts that she never even thought about it. The protagonist is perplexed. The gnome girl shows her new friends the food warehouse. They see a lot of food. Fantasia is very hungry. Lala stops her. Pepperon and the others feed the prisoners. Everyone is happy and laughing. The protagonist says that he, Ace, and Pochi will take Purst and the other leaders to the Spaldings. He orders Lala, Airy, and Fantasia to take Race and the others to the village. His subordinates agree. One of the former servants wonders what they should do. The protagonist says that from now on they are no longer servants. The girl rejoices in her freedom. He says that there are probably those among them who have nowhere to go, and such people can go with Lala. He guarantees their safety. The girl from the dwarf race is silent. The girl from the elven race asks her what happened. The girl says that nothing happened, and she is just wondering what to do now. Riss urges her to come with her and asks if she has somewhere to return to. The dwarf replies negatively and says that since she insists so much, she is forced to agree. The girl takes her hand and pulls her along. Glorious Septembre village. Lucy is very worried about her little sister's disappearance. A man calms her down and says that she will be fine because Mr. Pepperon will definitely save her in the end. One of the boys turns to Nobo and tells him that someone is approaching the village. Lucy smiles with tears in her eyes. Her younger sister runs to her, screaming happily. Lucy is glad she is safe and tells her never to wander outside the village again. The girls hug. Reese apologizes for worrying her. Everyone greets her. Fanacia hugs Arian Panna and says that it is very touching. Nobo wonders where Mr. Pepperon and the others are. Lala explains to him that he, Gus, and Pochi are delivering the Air Force leaders to the Spaldings, the fortress of the Spalding family, Tadza Castle. Lou is surprised that the little commander returns so quickly and asks who this man is. Pepperon explains to him that he is one of the leaders of the Black Company that has been causing the Spalding family headaches. The man exclaims in surprise. He says that this can't be. The protagonist says that their shelter is located northeast of here, under old ruins underground. He also says that they left their remaining mercenaries in the servants' cages so they can see for themselves later. Lou still doesn't believe it and orders the soldiers to go there immediately. They agree. The man is surprised that their motley village could actually cope in such a short time. The protagonist asks if he will lower the tax to 10%. Lou answers positively and says that he promised. Moreover, besides the fact that he will lower the tax, Pepperon brought him a very valuable gift, and he wants to listen to what Perse will tell about the BBC. He is angry. Pepperon says that, in that case, he must go and asks him not to forget about the tax. Lou turns to Mr. Pepperon and extends his hand. He hopes that he will continue to serve the Spalding family. The protagonist agrees, and they shake hands. Outside, Gas is happy that their Mr. Pepperon has returned. He praises him. Pepperon says that they have agreed and can now return. Pochi wonders if it was boring for them to bring them here. The protagonist is embarrassed and exclaims in surprise. Gus explains to him that, unlike in the past, their village is still part of the Spalding family's holdings, and they are better off for having passed on information about the problems in their territories. Gus asks Mr. Pepperon if he is right, and he answers yes. Gobolt says it is too difficult for him. The protagonist thinks to himself that Gus saved him. If this goes on, the Spalding family will begin to trust them more, and they will be able to expand their territory, but it will not be as easy as in the game, because state affairs will be more complicated than game mechanics. Gobolt is happy that their ranks of subjects have been replenished by almost 100 people, and Gloria Septim's combat squad will still be reborn, because he will train them so much that it will not seem like a little. Gus throws his hands behind his head and notes that there are most of the goblins there, and if they form a squad for secret missions, then he could be useful to them. Pepperon thinks that it is also important to expand the territory, but first we need to think about military power. He thinks that it is pointless to expand the territory and attract residents if they only have 7 military forces. If divided into 2 groups, those who will train the villagers and those who will go in search of books on magic, they will optimize their activities. He imagines it in his head. The protagonist, Gas and Pochi leave, and Pepperon calms down to himself and thinks that they will return home and discuss their future plans. In the village, he first wants to thank everyone for their excellent work, because thanks to their efforts they have increased the number of subjects, and Gloria Septim is inexorably on the path to Mare Glory. The protagonist also says that they lack combat power, so they will train newcomers and must search the ruins for books on magic. Gus suggests that they will find books on powerful magic, blueprints, and many useful things in these ruins. Manasia is happy and exclaims enthusiastically. She also wants to go to the ruins where the steel dragon was. Nobo notes that there are passages there that are sealed with high-level magic, and the distance is also quite large. Pochi asks where exactly they are going. Pepperon says they are going to Borst Tower. Lala is happy and says that their master Pepperon has great ideas as always. Ari asks who will go. The protagonist says that he, Gas, Fanacia, and Nobo will go, and Lala, Ari, and Pochi will stay at the base. Elfica exclaims loudly. She is upset. The girl says that she understands that Ari is needed for martial arts training and that Pochi must stay to protect the village. but she does not understand why she is also among those who stay. She makes the assumption that she did something wrong when they were on the mission to the Air Force lair. The girl thinks that it was because she spent too much time getting to the servants' cells because she did not know the way. The elf thinks that during this time, many innocent lives could have been saved, and it was all her fault. She gets upset and says that she is very sorry. The guy explains to her that this is not the case at all. He says that in his absence, someone must lead the village, and he understands that no one is capable of doing this except Lala. In the girl's imagination, the main character appears as a handsome man. She exclaims joyfully and blushes. The main character asks if anyone has any objections. His subjects say that there are no objections. Pepperon asks the girl if she will help him. She urges him to rely on her. Nobo says that in that case, he will tell the guys from the village about searching the ruins. The protagonist agrees and thanks him. He has someone in mind. The dwarf girl is surprised by the search of the ruins. The elf girl is surprised that they are invited. Nobo says that they are leaving in 3 days, but their wounds are not completely healed yet, and it will be dangerous, and if they are sure, they should refuse. The dwarf girl continues to think about searching the ruins. The girl, with aspiration in her eyes, says that they will go and calls on them to rely on them. Nobo agrees and says that he will convey this. The girl from the dwarf race is unhappy and they ask her why she agreed so easily. Because if something doesn't go right, they will die. The girl calms her down and says that everything will be fine because Pepperon and the others will be there. Also, the elven girl says that this is their chance. Panna doesn't understand what she's talking about. The girl explains to her that the only dwarves there will be Pepperon and Panna, so they can't rule out any possibility. The dwarf girl blushes and gets angry. She wonders what the girl has imagined and does not understand what kind of opportunity this is. The elf girl apologizes and says that Mr. Pepperon approached them himself, which means that he expects a lot from them. Lala jumps out of the bushes and says that she agrees with the girl, because Mr. Pepperon has high hopes for them, and to deceive his expectations is the same as betraying Gloria Septim. She says that they can't relax because this is a military mission. Reese and the Panna agree with her, not wanting to argue. The girl puts a particularly strong emphasis on the dwarf. She doesn't understand her. The elf girl tells her not to even think about trying to seduce Mr. Pepperon, just because they are of the same race. Panna angrily says that she didn't even try to do anything like that. The girl grabs the angry lady and leaves, saying that she cannot go on a campaign dressed as a servant in any case. They must change her into something in which she can appear before Mr. Pepperon. She screams that she can change herself. 3 days later, all the people are ready to leave. The protagonist says that he is leaving the village in their hands. Lucy shouts at Reese to listen to Mr. Pepperona and not to cause problems for anyone. The girl agrees with her sister, and Panna notes that they look more like mother and daughter than sisters. Lala yells at Panna to remember that she shouldn't do anything just because she and Mr. Pepperon are the same race. The girl screams in anger that she already knows everything. Phonacia laughs. The protagonist is perplexed. He says that they can already set off. Everyone is ready for the journey to Borf's Tower. Meanwhile, in Rabal, a city not far from Borf's Tower, there was whispering in a bar. One voice asked another if he had heard that in the Al-Fazarid Empire, the only thing they talk about is the Air Force. They had found it and destroyed it completely. One of them said that all the Knights of Spalding are like that. The second one said that it is not so, and others say that it is because of some gnome. Hearing this conversation, a man squeezed his glass of drink tightly. The men said that it was a lie. Suddenly, the stranger turned to them and asked if they would share this story with him. At this time, Reese and Panna were diligently practicing martial arts. Gus said that everything was as he expected, and after the whole thing with the Air Force, their courage had not diminished. Anasia said with a smile that Riss was still a little good-natured. The monsters were defeated, and Panna happily said that everything was ready. Pepperon was surprised to hear that the two of them could still do something. Reese thanked him, and Panna sighed and said that they would definitely be able to do that. Pepperon thought that if they were having trouble at this stage, then they definitely couldn't get into Borf's Tower. He thought about letting them practice a little more on stronger opponents. He smiled and said that their next task was to defeat the man-eating bear that lived in that forest. He said that they would wait for him in the forest. Reese was very surprised by such words. He smiled. and said that if they united, there was a chance that they would win. Panna enthusiastically agreed and said that they would do it. Together, Panna and Rhys went into the forest. The boys watched this. They were worried because they did not know if they would really be okay alone. Because Mr. Pepperon gave them a really difficult task. The guy said he knew it was a bit extreme, but it was the only way they would know how high the stakes were when fighting a powerful enemy. Before they got to Borf's tower, he wanted them to have a solid grounding. Pepperon went ahead and told Fanasi and Nobo to wait there, and he invited Gus to come with him. The boy agreed, and together, they went ahead. Nobo said with a smile that while they were waiting, they could just cook something to eat. Fanasi was very happy about this idea. The boys walked slowly through the forest. Rhys said worriedly that they would definitely be fine alone. Panna grinned and asked her friend if she was really afraid. Rhys awkwardly said that a man-eating bear sounded like a very bloodthirsty monster. The kind that people say you should run and never look back if you meet it. Panna said that it was just a bear. With a smile on her face, she asked if Rhys had seen how she had defeated those rabbits. The Smog Panna said that she would have chopped up some bear just like that. Suddenly, they heard a menacing growl. They turned and froze, seeing that behind them stood a huge bear. He just stood silently next to them and looked at the girls. Suddenly, he opened his bloodthirsty eyes, which in the blink of an eye caused animal fear in Pan and Rhys. Together, the girls ran away from there as fast as they could. Rhys asked Panna, reminding her of her previous words about whether she would chop up the bear. Panna exclaimed that she could not, because she could not defeat such a thing, since it was huge. The girls could also notice that in addition to its size, this bear was also very fast. They turned around and saw that it was approaching. Panna said that at this rate it would simply trample them. The girl took out a knife and turned back with some uncertainty. Panna stabbed the monster in the stomach with all her might. The bear froze for a moment, putting his hand on his stomach. After that, he rushed to attack again, and Panna was amazed to notice that she couldn't even hurt him. Because the girl was completely focused on her defeat, she didn't even notice that the monster was about to attack her. Rhys arrived just in time. The girl told her friend to be careful, then rushed forward, blocking Pan from the monster's direct attack. By the time the bear came to his senses, he had lost sight of both girls. At that time, they were hiding behind one of the trees. Rhys was breathing heavily. Panna sighed and said that she really thought she was going to die. She looked at her friend and was very shocked by what she saw. She exclaimed loudly that Rhys was hurt. The girl smiled awkwardly and said that it was just a scratch and she was fine. Panna turned pale when she realized the situation. She lowered her head and apologized to her friend. She was talking about how she had previously rushed at the monster alone, and this is what had happened. Rhys encouraged the girl and said that now they should try together, because it might be that she simply couldn't do it alone. She said enthusiastically that together they would definitely be able to defeat this bear-like cabbage. Panna was inspired and agreed. At that very moment, the figure of a bear appeared, who discovered the girls in the bushes. They were very surprised and only managed to turn around when the bear was about to kill them both with its sharp claws. However, suddenly little Pepperon appeared right in front of him. He quickly stood right in front of the bear, which greatly surprised the monster. Without any hesitation, Pepperon created a neat fireball in his hand, which he redirected towards the monster. As the attack flew straight at the bear, it quickly increased in size. The ball hit the bear's upper body, causing it to burst into flames. The monster only managed to try to growl before falling to the ground, exhausted. When the body of the immobilized monster was on the ground, Pepperon easily jumped on it, then kicked it with all his might, pressing the monster into the ground. Rhys looked at them in shock and noticed that Pepperon and Gus had come to them. The guy did not turn around, but calmly said that, nevertheless, it was too early to put them against such a strong opponent. He also said that they both learned a pretty good lesson. Panna, no matter what the opponent in front of her, she does not lose her fighting spirit at all. But sometimes going against the enemy alone means putting her comrade in danger. Rhys always puts others first, but that same kindness can turn into weakness, and in that case she will die. With a smile on his face, Pepperon said that when their strength alone was not enough, they could join forces. Only after they combined their strength could they become stronger, and that was why they brought both of them along. With a smile on his face, he said that they had already gotten the ingredients for dinner. and so it was high time to return to Nobo with everyone else. At this time, a group of people were walking through the forest. A young guy named Rock Baylist said that he was quite surprised because he did not expect anyone else to target the Air Force in the Spartan territories. He said that he thought they would have a chance to become famous in the Alphazarate Empire. This guy was an adventurer. The mage girl named Manasi Kianbera, who was with him, agreed, and said that, besides, they should go there to see for themselves. The knights thought they were working for the Air Force, and she said they really needed trouble. Healer Micah Reister asked if it was true that the Air Force leaders would be defeated by the gnome. Guardband Gentry said that he knew it was hard to believe, but if Commander Lu said so, then it must be true. Rock said with a grin on his face that he would really like to see what kind of strong dwarf he really is. Suddenly, Manassi called the boy's name, and he immediately turned around. At that moment, they were surrounded by a bunch of monsters that resembled wolves. Rock smiled and said that these were guard wolves that guarded the entrance to Bor's tower. He reached for his weapon and began to provoke the monsters to attack him. One by one, the wolves ran straight at him. At this time, the boys were also heading to Borf's tower. The boys said that the entrance to the tower was guarded by guard wolves. Pepperon said that they could only enter if they were dealt with first. Panna said that she was starting to get worried. When they got pretty close to the entrance, Nobo noticed that someone was already fighting the monsters. Pepperon sighed and said that someone had beaten them to it. Rock turned around when he saw the boys. He shouted loudly at them to run away from there because it was quite dangerous there. At that moment, one of the guard wolves rushed straight at the boys. Without even flinching, Pepperon extended his hand and used a snowstorm that instantly destroyed all the monsters attacking them. The frozen monsters quickly fell apart. Pepperon asked the strangers if they were adventurers, then apologized for interrupting them. Rock, on the other hand, thanked the guy for his help. Suddenly, he froze, noticing that Pepperon was a gnome. He approached him very quickly, and then asked if he was the gnome who had recently defeated the Air Force in the Spartan domain. Pepperon was confused. He quickly walked away and awkwardly said that it was true and he was that gnome. Rock exclaimed in admiration, saying that he never thought he would actually meet Pepperon. He said that they also wanted to go against them. However, they had no information. Pepperon was trying to figure out why this guy looked so cool, because he was not like the others. Rock asked if the guys were country boys, because it was very rare to find such a team. Pepperon quickly realized that Rock looked like the real protagonist of the game. The adventurer introduced himself with a wide smile, then said that it was a pleasure to meet him. He extended his hand to his interlocutor. Reese angrily asked the guy to stop, then asked if he even knew who he was talking about. She said that this man was the liberator of the 7 races. She raised her hand and exclaimed that this was the greatest ruler of Gloria Septem, the greatest and bravest hero of this world, Mr. Pepperon. The guy thought uncomfortably that she spoke just like Lala. The adventurers thought deeply when they heard about Gloria Septem. They said that they had never even heard of such a thing. Rock asked the boys if they were heading to Bor's tower. He asked if they could go along, then said they wouldn't be a burden. Pepperon looked away and thought that this was, of course, inconvenient, but they had already contacted them, and if he refused, they would still follow them, which could greatly interfere with the guy's plan. Pepperon said that he didn't care, but they weren't heading to the tower for military victories. Their main goal was to find magic books and train. He said that if they were okay with that, they could all go together. With a wide smile, Rock said that they didn't care at all. Manasi approached him and told him that he should be more polite. She said that they only came to this place for the sake of the guard wolves, and they weren't even going to go to the tower. Rock said that he knew about it, but he wanted to see with his own eyes the power that could defeat the Air Force. He smirked and said that besides, if they retreated now, it would be a disgrace to all the A-rank adventurers. Maikei said lightly that they had recently moved up to B rank. Ban sighed with a smile and said that if the leader said so, then they should go. Munasasi took a deep breath and asked why she wasn't even surprised by this. Rock smiled and exclaimed that it was time for them to move forward. Manasi said that they didn't even know where the entrance to the tower was. Together, the boys went to the first floor of Bor's tower. Rock looked around and said what the tower was like inside. Mike noted that it was rather gloomy inside. Panna also looked around, after which she said that it was needless to say that it was completely empty inside. Reese asked how exactly they could get to the upper floors. Gus smiled, then pointed at something and said that you can use this to get up. Reese turned around, interested. The goblin was pointing at a magic circle that was on the ground. Reese asked if this was magic. Noble pointed out that it was a teleportation circle, and if they made a mistake in the circle, they could be transported to the lower floors, causing them problems. Ban said he understood, then noted that it was impossible to figure it out right away. Musashi took a deep breath and said that it was quite a problematic system. Pepperon said that they already knew how to get to the upper floors, so they would be able to get there without any problems. Panda said that everything was very simple. Pepperon turned around and told the boys not to relax, because if they got too close to the circle, there could be problems. At this time, Fantasia was standing on some circle and calling everyone to go faster. Seeing this, Pepperon was speechless. He thought that if they approached the circle, monsters would appear, and they wouldn't be able to use the circle until they defeated those monsters. The boys didn't understand why nothing was happening. They asked if they should stand in a circle too. They all stood in one place and asked if they were standing in the right place. Pepperon noticed everything quite late. He asked them to wait a little, but at that moment the magic circle activated and bright rays appeared there. After that, they disappeared. Manasi was amazed to see that the circle had disappeared, and with it, the people in it had also disappeared. Panna nervously asked if this meant that they would no longer be able to get up. Suddenly, the girl noticed something next to her. She turned around in surprise and then noticed with horror that a monster was standing right behind her. She screamed loudly, very scared. The guys didn't understand what it was at all, because there wasn't even time for it to appear. Pepperon didn't understand why everything was happening like this, because this event was also different from what was in the game. He thought that it looked like they wouldn't be able to handle this so easily. Rock laughed and then said that he didn't really understand what was going on there, but it looked like they would have to fight this monster one way or another. Pepperon said that it looked like it, but it was time to stop talking. He smiled and asked if the adventurers would show what they were capable of. Rock happily agreed. He said that Pepperon would never see him make the same mistake he did during the battle with the wolves again. Together, they rushed into battle, wanting to finish off this monster. At this time, Fantasia and the other boys were on the second floor of Forf's tower. They noticed that Mr. Pepperon and the others were late. Nobo wondered if they had been transported to another floor. Gus suggested that if that was true, they should probably head to the top floor. Ban, who had been standing to the side, asked if they were going alone. He said he didn't doubt their strength, but he was worried that something would happen to them if they went alone. He said that their leader, Pepperon, seemed to know more about the tower than anyone else. On top of that, he was worried about Roke and Manasi. He said that it was still better for them to stay. Fantasia interrupted him and said that everything would be fine, because they had been through this many times before. She said with a big smile that they should just go forward. Ban asked if she was so confident because of her strength. Nobo countered that Fantasia just never thinks ahead. Gus said that if Pepperon was with them, they wouldn't be afraid of anything either. He said that they should still go to the top floor. At that moment, one of the monsters was completely defeated. Pepperon asked if the girls could tell the difference between him and the man-eating bear and the horned rabbits. Reese immediately agreed. Panna said she couldn't predict his movements at all. He thought as he looked at Rock and Manasi. He thought that while the vanguard was fighting with all their might, the rear guard was providing support with magic. They were a well-coordinated team. He smiled, thinking that this would set a good example for Pain and Riss. Suddenly, Rock shouted loudly, calling the girl's name. Manasi agreed and said that she would do it now. She slammed her magic staff on the ground, creating an ice burn. The monster was shocked because its paws were frozen. As this happened, Rock reached for his sword as he charged at the monster. With a swift strike, the young adventurer sliced the spider's legs, causing the monster to fall to the ground. Pepperon smiled and said they did a good job. Rock also smiled and said it was very good. Manasi was breathing very hard at this time. The girl stood up and said that it was quite difficult to cover for Rock while Mike was not around. At this time, Panna exclaimed that the teleportation circle had returned. Reese happily said that now they would definitely be able to go up. Pepperon stopped them, saying that he still wanted to check something in this place. He said that it seemed to be a little different from the first time he was there. Without Fantasia and the others, they wouldn't be able to get to the top floor so easily. Manassi asked in shock, already guessing what he wanted to say. Pepperon said that it was exactly like that, and they would have to conquer the tower on their own. They were all very shocked by these words. He said that, of course, on the way to the top floor, they would encounter a lot of strong monsters, and if they were the same level as the guardian spiders, then he would also be able to cover them. However, everyone must protect themselves first. Manassi looked away, thinking that the guardian spiders were perhaps the easiest enemies in the entire tower. He said that they could still go out that door now. They could wait until Pepperon conquered that tower and brought the others with him. If they enter this circle, they will have to reach the top floor. There will be no way back. If they are not confident in their strength, then it is better for them to stay. Suddenly, someone interrupted Pepperon. Rock proudly exclaimed that they would not be a burden. He said that he was also an adventurer who had entered the dungeon. He stated that he would never stoop to running with his tail between his legs. Pepperon felt awkward. The guy thought about how Rock was imagining himself as the main character again, which made him feel extremely awkward. Manassi asked if it wasn't enough, since they had only walked one floor, and that should have been enough. She said that it would be better for them to just wait there, because hoping to conquer Borf's tower with only their strength was too presumptuous. She said that if we were to be honest, then only she, Rock, and Pepperon would fight. Hearing such speeches, Reese's face darkened noticeably. She said angrily that she and Panna were not there for beauty. With an obvious smirk, Manassi asked if this was true. She took a deep breath and said that she admitted that the little girl was doing quite well. After that, she pointed out some pretty bad moves on Reese's part. This only made the girl angrier. She shouted that they were coming too, because they, unlike some, weren't afraid to climb Borf's tower. Manassi said that she didn't know how they could beat the Air Force with such a lineup, when the elves and dwarves should obviously be staying home. Reese screamed so that Manassi could not insult Mr. Pepperon and Panu. At this time, Rock bowed low and asked for forgiveness, saying that Manassi was really a good person, but if she got excited, she would be extremely angry. Watching this, Pepperon simply sighed and said that everything was fine. He also said that if they wanted to change their minds, now was a pretty good chance, because if they made a single mistake, they would be doomed. They were all silent, but they were obviously thinking about Pepperon's words. After a while, they all stood on the magic circle, after which they all began to be transported to another place. This was not an ordinary sensation. They looked around, and then Reese asked if they were on the second floor. Panna said that it wasn't that different from the first. Manassi looked at Pepperon and asked where the next teleportation circle was. At this time, the guy was somewhat surprised by what he managed to see there. Rock asked if there was a teleportation circle on this floor. Pepperon said there wasn't one and that it simply couldn't be, so they had to search the entire room carefully. Starting from the second floor, the teleportation circles are located in the direction of the 4 cardinal directions. To move forward, you need to choose one of them. Pepperon was quite panicked, because if the circle was not there, then they could neither go up nor go back down. Manassi leaned against a wall and took a deep breath, saying what she had said earlier, that they really should have just stayed downstairs. She said that they had already searched the room completely, but there was nothing there. She said that it was just a waste of time, when suddenly, something caught her attention. She turned around and her face turned very pale. Right in front of her stood a huge monster, several times larger than the girl herself. She immediately ran back, asking what it was. Reese was surprised to hear that it was moving. Pepperon quickly realized that it was a guardian. He said that the circle would most likely appear after they defeated the monsters. The principle is slightly different, but they still have to defeat these creatures. Pepperon told Payne and Rice to stay back and not to attack under any circumstances, while he instructed Rock and Manassi that they would have to work hard again. Payne, Riss, and Rock accepted the order while Manassi looked rather tense about everything that was happening. Together, they were all ready to engage in a fierce battle. Pepperon was the first to rush at the enemy. He jumped forward with a neat jerk, then took out his weapon and hit the monster on its iron head. Along with this blow, a very loud sound was heard throughout the room. Panna noted that the monster had an iron body, while Reese said that Mr. Pepperon simply couldn't cut it with his sword. The boy looked at his sword and thought, as expected, this monster couldn't be defeated with strength alone. Pepperon charged again, but this time he wanted to try a new trick. The monster then pulled out two huge swords from behind his back. He swung them in front of him, then tried to hit Pepperon. A tall cloud of dust rose up in the room and slowly settled. And then the monster noticed something he had not expected to see at all. He looked surprised when it happened. Little Pepperon smirked as his weapon easily blocked the monster's attack. Pepperon swung his weapon, causing the enemy swords to be forced apart. With careful movements, he gathered magical power into his hand. Immediately after that, he raised his hand and spread a huge amount of magical flames on the monster. The monster instantly heated up. He was quite surprised by this maneuver. He waved his hand, causing the flames to disperse. He looked at Pepperon, who in turn smiled slyly. Panna covered her face with her hand, avoiding the flames. She could only gasp in admiration, because Pepperon's strength was truly amazing to her. After that, Pepperon jumped up from the ground and rushed to attack the monster again. Once above the enemy, he used his flames to attack again. It continued to use strong flame magic, sometimes changing his position. This lasted for quite a long time. Reese asked why he only used flames, since it could be seen that they seemed to have no effect on him at all. Panna exclaimed that this was not so. She pointed out to her friend the monster's iron body, which was beginning to melt due to the large amount of fire magic. She was very surprised when she noticed this. Pepperon smirked, thinking that this state of the monster would be ideal for him. He swung his sword again, not taking his eyes off the monster. With all his might, Pepperon struck the monster with his sword, after which the enemy's already weak body was cut into two parts. The boy looked at the defeated monster and sighed lightly. He thought about how he used flames 5 times on one guard. He looked away, thinking that earlier he wanted to save his strength as much as possible until the maximum floor. He simply couldn't swing his sword so freely without Thanasia and the others by his side. However, Pepperon couldn't deny that this impromptu performance was pretty good, and he should probably come up with a name for this attack. During his deep thoughts, Panna looked at the guy with admiration. She thought about how she just couldn't deny the fact that Pepperon was incredibly cool, and that he was very different from other gnomes. She thought about how she really wanted to be as strong as him one day. She blushed a little, and thought about how she could be with him in such a future. Suddenly, a fantasy appeared in her head about Pepperon kneeling in front of her and asking her to fight with him. There she would happily accept his proposal, and together they would fight for the rest of their lives. She quickly waved her hand, trying to rid herself of this fantasy. She wondered what kind of terrible feelings these were. Panna assured herself that she simply felt very sorry for Pepperon, and that was why she wanted to become stronger, to help him, at least a little, nothing more. Suddenly, someone called her name. Panna woke up and asked shyly what was wrong. Reese looked at her friend and asked her worriedly what was wrong, after which she pointed out that Panna was as red as a tomato. The girl became very embarrassed and said that everything was fine, and she was just thinking about how cool Pepperon was. Reese said it was true. Suddenly, Panna noticed the mixed emotions that were reflected on her friend's face. Reese smiled awkwardly and said that she was so scared that she couldn't move. She could only think how sad it was that she couldn't be of some use to Pepperon. She said that it was just as that girl Manasi had said, that Riss wasn't fit for battle. Panna said that wasn't true at all. Suddenly, Pepperon came up to her and said that it was not like that at all. The girl turned around in surprise. The guy said that in battles, not only the attackers are important, but also the defenders. This time he ordered them both to be in the rear guard, and only because they obeyed him, he was able to fully focus on the attacks. The guy said that Rock and Manasi were really strong. Being just the two of them on their team, they are able to navigate and act according to the situation. He said it would be great if they emphasized something from the beat, but they don't need to compare themselves to the masters. The girls were very inspired by Pepperon's words. The guy himself was able to breathe a sigh of relief. He thought about how hard it was to say something like that every time, and it would be much easier for him if he had a collection of the king's phrases or something like that. After that, Pepperon turned his gaze to the other side, and thought about what would happen if he simply trusted Manasi and Roku to crush that guard. At this time, the monster launched a rather serious attack, causing Rock to fly into the wall and hit hard. He looked up and was amazed at the enormous force from just one blow. Manasi worriedly asked the boy if he was okay. He said he was fine, after which Manasi suggested he use the same tactics as with the spider experience. She said she could stop him, Rock smirked and said he trusted her with it. He then immediately ran forward while Manasi gathered magical power in her staff. At one point, she cried out loudly, saying that Rock should fly now. He followed Manasi's words. The boy pushed off the ground and found himself high in the air. The monster looked up in surprise as a powerful flash of light erupted. Manasi slammed her staff down with all her might, creating a large path of ice magic. The monster came to its senses in time, thanks to which it managed to grab its swords and block Manasi's attack. Rock was very shocked, because he did not immediately understand what had happened. The girl said loudly and no less shocked that the monster had repelled her attack. There was a thick layer of magic ice on the ends of the monster's swords. He easily broke it and pulled out his weapon. He then stood up and swung his weapon to attack Rock, who was in a very dangerous position in the air. He crossed his arms to block the attack that would hit him in the next few seconds. He tried to move through the air as fast as he could. Manasi could only call out the boy's name in concern, but there was no way to help him. Just before the monster attacked Rock, Pepperon began to approach them. He moved at incredible speed while the spell glowed brightly in his hand. He swung his sword carefully and quite gracefully, using the flame strike. This attack instantly passed through the metal body of the monster. Pepperon's sword was so hot that it melted the monster's body in an instant, causing it to quickly fall to the ground. Rock at this time looked at Pepperon with sincere admiration on his face. The guy landed and looked back out of the corner of his eye, seeing that the monster was defeated. He looked at his blade proudly and noted that if he had immediately enveloped his sword in flames, he would not have wasted so much energy. Manasi looked at what was left of the monster in amazement. She said that it melted from just one blow. Roke exclaimed that everything was as expected. Pepperon turned and said that, and they could now move on to the next floor. A magic circle appeared on the ground next to them. The boys all got into it together, but noticed that something was definitely different this time. Pepperon nervously asked what was going on. The others also looked shocked. Suddenly, everything around them went dark. They asked what had just happened. The boys couldn't see each other because it was so dark. Panna asked if that meant they had already been transported to another floor. Suddenly, the girl felt something with her hand. She turned and asked what it was. Suddenly, her face turned very pale because of what she saw in front of her. Right in front of them was a dragon of incredible size. The monster silently looked at them with its cruel eyes. Rock's face turned pale as he said that the size of this monster was simply astounding. Pepperon was incredibly surprised. In front of them was the second guardian, who was called the Dragon. Pepperon could not understand anything at all, because the dragon was the guardian of the 5th floor. At the same time, in the House of Monsters, which is located on the 8th floor of Borst Tower, Fantasia and the others quite easily dealt with a large number of monsters. The girl smiled widely, after which she exclaimed that they had finally cleared this floor. A truly amazed Bean noted that she was able to defeat so many monsters on her own. An equally amazed Micah said that apparently there are such cool harpies as Fantasia. At that moment, Gus caught their attention. He loudly told the others that there was a chest nearby. Nobo smiled and told the boys to take as much as they could carry. Nobo turned and asked Mr. Banna with a smile if he would help them. Micah sighed while Banna gasped a little awkwardly before agreeing. While the boys were collecting various items, Fantasia leaned on the lid of the chest and said with a smile that Mr. Pepperon and the others were probably having fun too. At this very moment, Pepperon and everyone else were on the 5th floor, tense. Right in front of them was a terrifying 2-headed dragon. Manasi exclaimed that she had only seen such things in pictures and books. Rock looked at the monster and asked with some nervousness if they could really win. He said that the 3 of them could still do something. After that, he gave the order to Riss and Payne to retreat. Reese loudly exclaimed that they could fight too, but Pepperon quickly refused her and said that this monster was clearly different from the ones before. The 3 of them could defeat it, and Nobo's magic would cover them. The guy said that they couldn't cast spells, and even in the rearguard it would be extremely dangerous for them, because the monster could inflict a fatal wound with one blow. Panna turned pale when she heard about the possibility of receiving such a wound. Pepperon looked at Manasi and asked her name, then said that he wanted to assign her to protect Riss and Panna, as well as cover for them. Manasi came to her senses and then quickly agreed. The girl waved her hand smugly and said that since she was protecting them, they could relax, because they were just a weak elf and dwarf. She gracefully raised her staff then quickly slammed it down on the ground. Immediately after, a fairly good protective field appeared around them, which Panna and Riss were visibly surprised by. Manasi stepped forward a little and then told the girls that it was safe inside this field, so they should sit quietly inside it. Panna looked at the edges of the protective field in admiration and said how incredible it was. Riss was visibly displeased, but said nothing. Pepperon stepped forward and gave a short instruction that they should begin the battle. Rock and Manasi looked nervous, but were ready to fight. At that very moment, as if following Pepperon's command, the two dragons rushed to attack the boys. Pepperon and Rock immediately rushed forward while Manasi held her staff, maintaining her defense. Panna watched the fight under the shield with the most sincere admiration, while talking about how cool it was to be a mage. She was truly impressed by Manasi's abilities. Riss was a little surprised by these comments and asked if this was true. Panna asked if it was impossible to do absolutely anything with magic. She can't do magic at all, but she dreams of learning how to use fire, water, or explosions. Thanks to this, she wanted to become a little more useful to Mr. Pepperon. Listening to this, Riss was awkwardly silent. She glanced at Manasi, who was at this time exerting all her strength to maintain the protective field and cover the boys. Riss felt her emotions boil over as she remembered Manasi's taunts about the girl being clumsy, and that it was no good at all. All that talk about how neither of them could cast spells, so they weren't fit for fighting either. She also remembered the words about how they were plain, because they lacked the ability to cast spells, and how they could do nothing to help Pepperon. Finally, she remembered his words about them sitting quietly inside and not getting in the way. It angered her that they always needed to be protected. Riss's emotions went over the edge and she began to shake with anger. The next moment she rushed forward while Panna tried to stop her, confused by her friend's actions. Riss ran out of the protective field and went straight to the battlefield, where the most elite warriors were now fighting hand in hand with Pepperon. The first to notice was Rock, who was amazed by the girl's actions. When Pepperon saw Riss, he shouted her name loudly, telling her not to come near. Manasi was also confused, because she couldn't understand why this girl came out of the protective circle. The dragon couldn't help but notice this either. Seeing the little elf walking straight towards him, the monster quickly switched its attention and tried to kill Riss. The girl was very confused. Panna screamed loudly, trying to warn her friend of the danger. Riss stretched her arms out in front of her, then quickly closed her eyes, afraid of what might happen. The next moment she used light magic. Panna covered her face with her hands, amazed that her friend could use magic. Manasi noticed that the dragon had stopped. She exclaimed that the monster had stopped and that this was the perfect moment to attack. The boys didn't waste any time. They instantly jumped up from the ground and found themselves above the monster's head. They raised their weapons to deliver the final attack. Rock screamed loudly as Pepperon silently spun around to attack as hard as he could. At that moment, they both struck hard enough to hit both of the monster's heads, piercing them through. At that moment, both heads of the monster fell to the ground, and the boys were able to breathe a sigh of relief because the dragon was defeated. Riss looked surprised at what she had done on her own. Panna ran straight to her friend. She looked very worried. Riss turned around and apologized to Panna, but the girl interrupted her and said that she had jumped out so suddenly, which surprised her greatly. However, Panna said that it was simply incredible because Riss was able to use magic. At this time, Manasi, who was obviously angry, was walking towards the girls with quick and rather hard steps. She walked straight up to Riss and looked at her with a cruel gaze. With a careful movement, she moved Panu, who looked very surprised. With a displeased expression, Riss asked what was wrong. The next moment, Manasi slapped the girl across the face. Then she screamed loudly, asking who this stupid elf was. She asked if she hadn't told her to stay inside the protective field earlier. Manasi asked what Riss was thinking when she decided to jump out of there and onto the battlefield. Riss immediately placed her palm on the spot where Manasi had hit. She clamped her lips shut and tears appeared in her eyes. She could not answer a word. Panna tried to stop Manasi and tell her not to talk like that, but suddenly Pepperon called her name and stopped her. The boy coldly told her not to interfere. Rock watched awkwardly. Panna knelt down and said that she just wanted to live up to Mr. Pepperon's expectations. She hung her head down and said that they just couldn't be allowed to be protected forever. Manasi sighed and looked away, while Riz said that she just wanted to be as useful as she was. Manassi asked the girl to listen to her. After that, she said that the leader of Riz did not even tell her not to fight because she was a nuisance. She stated that if the girl was a nuisance, she would have simply been left to wait at the first floor. Manassi slammed her staff on the ground, then sternly said that Pepperon had taken her with him because he thought she could be something, and if she wanted to somehow reciprocate his feelings, then she shouldn't try to die in vain. Riz looked at Manassi with admiration, for her words had indeed had a strong effect on her. She bowed low and apologized to Manassi for what she had done. The girl lowered her staff and said that she had also gone too far. Manassi apologized and said that she should not have said all those things that she had blurted out earlier in a stream of anger. However, she added that if Manassi wanted to cover them in battle, she should stand further away from the enemy. Rock laughed as the atmosphere became lighter, while the rest of the boys were able to smile. Manassi exclaimed about the importance of constantly assessing the situation in combat and providing appropriate assistance. She added that the light was not close combat. Riz quickly said what she understood. She laughed awkwardly and said that she was desperate, so it happened completely by accident. She also noted that she herself did not have time to understand anything. Manassi said that it might be that this was an accident, but from now on, if she trains, she will be able to use even stronger magic than this. She said that in magic, Riz seemed to have even more talent than her. Hearing this, the little elf asked what these words meant. Manassi sat down and said that everything except ice magic was difficult for her. If their healer, Mikey, was not there, she was capable of a rather small number of spells. She smiled and said that she was not such an all-powerful sorceress as they might think. Suddenly, Rock said from behind that if it weren't for this staff, she wouldn't be able to cast spells at all. Manassi screamed that this wasn't true at all, because the staff simply helped her save mana. At that moment, Pepperon addressed Riz. He slowly approached her, and the girl immediately felt a strong sense of guilt. She fell to her knees and bowed her head, trying to apologize. She was so nervous that she couldn't even find the right words. Pepperon said that the light was amazing, and it was the first time she was in a fight and was able to defeat a two-headed dragon, and that was worth a lot. He smiled broadly and said that he was looking forward to her help in the future. Riz was very happy. She looked at Pepperon, after which she readily agreed with his words. Suddenly, Panna waved her hand at them, saying that a passage to the floor had appeared. Riz immediately happily went to her friend, while Pepperon thought about what floor he would throw them to next. He wanted to get to the monster house floor to train the two on small monsters, but there were only mid-level bosses here, so they couldn't get any real combat experience. If they reached the top floor and still hadn't reunited with Fantasia and the others, it might even be killed. Pepperon's face turned pale at the thought. Rock turned around and looked at Pepperon, while everyone else was already standing on the magic circle. Rock asked the guy what happened and if he was coming with them. Pepperon tried to come to his senses, and then said that he was coming. He felt nervous, thinking that he was relying on the guys for this. At the same time, in Bor's tower, on the top floor, right at the entrance to the gate of the top floor, Fantasia and the others were there. The satisfied girl lay on the defeated monster and joyfully exclaimed that they were done, and now only the final boss remained. Fantasia was extremely calm at that moment. Ban, pale with shock, said that she was able to defeat absolutely all the bosses on her own. The rest of the guys were sitting in one place and eating when Nobo said that this happens every time. Suddenly, Fantasia noticed that some figures were appearing in the air. She happily rose and gasped. The very next moment, Mr. Pepperon was standing in front of the guys, and also there were Riz, Panna, Rock, and Manassi, about which, accordingly, Farsia was shouting. Pepperon walked on and sighed happily, feeling relieved. He said that, fortunately, they were okay. Nobo said that he was already starting to worry, but it was very good that they met again. Fantasia ran to Pepperon and told him that he should see how much treasure they had collected. Pepperon looked at her and then praised the girl for her achievement. Ban commented that the boys looked extremely battered. Rock said that everything was fine because they were just fighting a dragon. After that, he asked Mike to take care of all of them. The healer quickly agreed. Mike raised his staff and said rather indifferently that they could begin. He closed his eyes and then called upon blue healing. Everything around them began to glow. In the blink of an eye, they were all whole. Panna and Riz were delighted to see that even the smallest scratch on their bodies had healed. while Manasi and Rock were merely receiving pleasant treatment. Rock couldn't help but comment on how good it felt. Pepperon noted that thanks to Mike's amazing magic, all their strength had returned. The healer bowed low, noting that he was only too happy to help. Gus decided to inquire and asked Nobo who the boss was in Borf's tower. Nobo calmly said that their enemy was the God of Guardians. This monster is a top-level golem that is also very large. It is quite a problematic opponent because it has 4 arms, each with a different weapon, and uses a variety of spells. Rock put his hands into fists and nervously said that they had finally reached the final boss. He told the others to take heart because only then would they be able to go into battle. Pepperon noted that they simply could not defeat the Guardian God with his power alone, and therefore they all needed to unite and completely crush him. After that, Pepperon said that they could go to God. They all stood near the entrance to the final boss. It would be a battle against the God of Guardians. All the guys were obviously nervous. The boys were walking up a fairly long staircase, wanting to get to the final boss. At one point, the staircase ended, and they all saw a large door with a bright light coming from it. After the boys entered the room, they saw a large dark ball which illuminated the room. The ball looked quite ominous, being in the very center of the room. Panna asked what it was, as she had never seen such a huge red sphere before. Riss asked if this was the Guardian God. Suddenly, the door behind them closed, making it impossible for them to exit. Pepperon tensed up a lot, then said that he was coming. Suddenly, the huge sphere began to shine even brighter, after which a creature appeared in the center of the room. In one of his hands was a huge ball with spikes, and the other was a sledgehammer and a sword. A huge monster, in the center of which was the red sphere, appeared in front of the guys. Ban was genuinely amazed by the incredible size of their enemy. Rock, no less shocked, said that compared to him, dragons were mere fry. Riz turned pale and asked how anyone could fight such a monster. Pepperon said that the main weakness of the Guardians is the flame of the Scarlet Sphere, which has a magical effect. He told Gus to go to the left, while he told Fanacia to go to the right, to distract the monster from the main force. Manasia raised her swords above her head, then joyfully exclaimed that she finally had a difficult opponent. Gus also stepped forward and, sighing, told the girl not to rejoice so much. Pepperon turned to Rock and said that they would destroy his weak point, the sphere. He asked if Rook could use flame magic. The guy turned around and said that he could use flame. Nobo smiled cruelly, then flexed his arms and said that the guys could easily leave the rearguard to them. Ban asked Mikey, somewhat worried, if he could cover this entire floor with a protective field and heal them. The healer took a deep breath, then said that he had just used up a lot of mana, so it would be quite difficult to do it all at once. Manasi turned and said that she would set up a shield, so it would need time to recover. Then she told Riss and Payne to stick together, and this time she did not allow them to jump out onto the field. The girls quickly agreed. Pepperon waved his hand and said that in that case they should start fighting. At that very moment, following the boss's order, Fanacia and Gus rushed into battle. The guy easily spun around, thanks to which he inflicted a fairly good wound on the monster. After that, he deftly lowered one foot to the floor and then rose higher. And with several copies of himself, he began to attack the monster, who was perplexed by what was happening around him. Each variation of Gus grinned slyly, while simultaneously delivering a number of fast and rather dexterous attacks to the monster. The next moment, the monster swung one of its 4 arms, causing a large ball of needles to block Gus's blow. The guy immediately jumped back after that and stood on the chain that connected the monster's weapons. Gus quickly ran along this chain, heading straight for the monster. He acted very quickly and gracefully. Without making a single unnecessary movement, he cut the chain he was running on, leaving the monster without one of its weapons. Then he glanced back and called out to Fanacia, saying that her time had come. The girl smiled and said that she understood. She raised her blades and rushed forward. She swung her weapons hard, then dealt 1,000 blows to the enemy. The monster took it all in his metal body, because he had no other choice in the situation. After that, Fanacia smiled and called Mr. Pepperon, saying that this was the perfect moment for him to attack. Pepperon, in turn, passed the order to Roku and Nobo, who were visibly worried. Nobo gathered his hands in one place and began to accumulate a large cloud of flame. The boys also did not lag behind doing the same. They collected a cloud of flame of quite a large size, because of which the room became very hot. The next moment, they all sent this powerful attack straight to the enemy's red core. Panna and Riss, who were watching the battle from the side, exclaimed that everything worked out and the battle was almost over. Suddenly, as if noticing the joy of the children, the monster raised its body and looked at them. At one point, large, attacking claws appeared around its broken body, and the children were very shocked to see them. Nobo immediately caught them and pulled them towards him so that they wouldn't be hurt too much by this attack. Thanasia hit herself hard, flying into the wall. She gasped loudly. Gus stood up, holding his head with one hand. He said that they had let their guard down. Menasia quickly rose from the ground and loudly exclaimed that she was angry. With all her speed, she rushed at the monster, trying to hit him on a wave of anger. The enemy swung his claw lightly, after which Thanasia flew away quite quickly with a loud cry. She flew straight into the protective field in which Panna and Riss were located. Her fall created a large cloud of dust in which the girls tried to find her. Russ immediately rushed to her side and called her name, while Panna approached worriedly and asked the harpy if she was okay. Mr. Pepperon, with some nervousness, told the others that they should not relax under any circumstances because the enemy was attacking them again. At that moment, the monster created bright magical spheres behind its back, from which it sent a rather fast and strong attack. At the moment of this attack, its claws were aimed straight at the guys. In the blink of an eye, this attack caught and tied up absolutely everyone who was on the battlefield, leaving them in a very vulnerable position there. The guys had no idea what to do, and Pepperon turned pale. Suddenly, the monster raised its claws upward, and magical energy began to gather from the top of its metal body. Looking at this, Nobo could tell that things were really bad for them. Manassi turned pale and said that even her shield couldn't withstand this. Gus smiled awkwardly, not taking his eyes off the mesmerizing attack, and then asked the others if this was the end of them. The next moment, the magical power that the monster was gathering became several times stronger. Pepperon was very nervous. He thought that everything would be much easier if only it could be broken. Suddenly, someone shouted to the boys that they should step back. Surprised by such words, they turned around, after which they saw that a man in armor was moving towards them. Ban stood in front of them, smiling rather sternly as sweat trickled down his face. The boys were very surprised when he entered the battlefield. The guy said that everything had been going very smoothly so far. He opened his arms wide and then thought that he was now acting as a protector and he must fulfill his duty by any means possible. The magic attack that the monster was about to launch landed in Ban's hands, who was quite surprised at how hard it was for him. His legs started to sway, and he had a hard time just staying on the ground. He asked what kind of magic it was. The veins on his face started to stand out from how much he was putting into it. He said that if it continued like this, he would just be crushed. Suddenly, he noticed something that really surprised him. Manassi, Riss, and Panna had gathered behind him, grabbing Ban with all their might and trying to help him. The astonished man asked what they were doing. Manassi exclaimed that if he died, it would be the end of them all. Riss just said that they might not be so strong, but if they were to die, they would all die together. Ban felt that the moment they tried to help him, his strength came back to him. He was silent for a while, then said that he was in their great debt. He used all his strength, then stretched out with all his might and pushed the magic ball away from himself and straight into the monster. Ban screamed loudly, trying to give absolutely everything he had to do what he had planned. He was eventually able to push the attack away from himself and launch it straight at the enemy. At that moment, Riss, Pina, and Manassi were sent flying back as the wave of magic was simply mind-boggling. The monster tried to stop the attack with his claws, but they quickly cracked. He was shocked when his own magic appeared right in front of his face. He was very surprised, after which the magic exploded right in front of his face. The next moment, the magic that held the boys back disintegrated. Pepperon smiled broadly and exclaimed that they were finally free. Ban fell to his knees and then caught his breath very heavily, saying that he had finally succeeded. Standing very close to him, Manassi also caught her breath very hard, after which she said that she even thought that she would die here. Reese fell to the floor and said that they were really very lucky. Panna fell and said that she no longer believed in it. At that moment, Micah stepped forward. Holding his staff in his hands, he said that he had already recovered and could now heal them. Ban said that they could wait a little longer and that they needed to heal Rock and the King first. Mike raised his staff and said that he obeyed. He carefully swung his weapon using beauty healing. At that moment, the guys felt much better. Nobo smiled awkwardly and said that they were all saved thanks to Mr. Bin. The man said that it was not so because everyone helped him, and besides, he was going to kill the god of the guardians anyway. Nobo smiled and said that they had all done a real feat by attacking the guardian god so easily. He also added that the final blow should be left to Rock and Pepperon. The boys who were healed by the red cure smiled and looked at the other boys. Pepperon smiled and asked Rock if they should end it. The boy smiled as well, and then agreed with a wide smile. In the blink of an eye, they jumped up from the ground and rushed at the enemy. They quickly found themselves at the core of the monster. After exchanging a brief glance, they took out their weapons and slammed them into the red core with all their might. At that moment, the monster's heart was broken. At this time, there was quite a noise in the stronghold, the village of Gloria Septim. Someone exclaimed that everything was ready. After that, the voice said that Mr. Pepperon had wanted to open public baths for a long time. With a wide smile, Lala said that the private baths where Mr. Pepperon could relax were also ready. Eerie thought that in this place, on the contrary, it would not be possible to relax properly. The girl walked forward and said with a wide smile that she was going to take a bath. She hadn't been in the bathroom for a long time. Lala gave her a sharp look. Right after that, she kicked Eri and exclaimed that she couldn't do that. She stated that this was Pepperon's private bathhouse, and if Eri wanted to, she could go to the bathhouse that was for everyone. Eri exclaimed that she already knew this, since she had never even thought about going to Pepperon's bathhouse. Lala smiled broadly, and then said that Mr. Pepperon was probably very tired after such a long hike, and when he returned, she would give him a good rub on the back. The girl couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Pepperon, who was in Bor's tower at the time. The tower itself was blown up at that moment. The boys covered their heads so that no debris or dust would get into their eyes. The boys watched in anticipation as the god of the guardians slowly cracked, and bright rays of light appeared from each of its cracks. The boys were looking up when they suddenly noticed that some parts of the monster were starting to disappear. Gus smiled and noted that the monster was disappearing. Van said with a smile that this meant that the guardian god had been crushed. Manasi, Riss, and Pana joined hands and began to dance joyfully in a circle. Manasi said joyfully that, as expected of the king, the strongest of the dwarves. With a big smile on her face, Reese added that Lee Rock was really cool. Pana said that they were all incredible in this situation. Nobo punched Ban's fist, and they said with a smile that they did it. Ban agreed with a smile on his face. Gus approached Phoenicia and told the girl that everything was over. She raised her head and asked if it was time to eat. Micah was amazed to hear how deeply the girl had fallen asleep. Suddenly, someone called the king, and Pepperon immediately turned around. Rock smiled widely and thanked the kid for being with them all this time, because it was thanks to him that Rock and all their comrades felt stronger. Pepperon said that he had absolutely no intention of taking them, the masters, with him. Rock was surprised. The guy said that they went to Borf's tower of their own free will, although he warned them before the second floor that if they were not sure, then let them return, but they did not turn back, but fought to the end. He said that they got there with their own powers, and he just walked with them. Rock was surprised by such words. Pepperon added that he should thank them. He said that meeting the masters had made the two of them grow as well, especially Riss, who had been mentored by Manasai, and their meeting had been the greatest achievement for Russ in this tower. Gus called Pepperon and said that there was a chest of the god of guards nearby. The guy was happy. He told him that it was dangerous there, and therefore they should take the contents of the chest out and divide it outside. Suddenly Gus asked where the treasures they had gotten before were. Nobo said they had left them in the previous room. All the boys happily walked towards the treasures. There was a lot of noise in Rabal, a town near Borf's tower. People were asking what the explosion in the tower was about. They said that an adventurer had been there before. They asked if they were really that mad. Others said that it couldn't be. On the top floor of this tower lives a killer bear more than 30 meters tall and hides a chest of untold riches, gold and silver. And the adventurers and thieves who believed in these tales entered the tower. But no one got out alive. The people said they encountered a dragon. They concluded that it was the human screams that frightened them. The boys had already taken all the treasures out of the tower. Riss asked if they would return via the portal. Pana asked if they would end up in some strange place and meet a dragon. Pepperon said that this was the top floor and they wouldn't get to any other floor, only outside. He thought that wherever they went, they would need a portal. Nobo said that everything would be as it was. Fennis said that it was time to go back. Rock agreed, and they teleported. The boys trained hard at the glorious Uptim training ground. Pochi said they couldn't serve in any special assault unit with such stamina. He ordered them to do 500 push-ups. Eri said that his conditions were Spartan. Pochi said that he was trying to raise real warriors out of them. Because Pepperon personally trains Rice and Panu, he was going to raise those who wouldn't lose. He asked if she wanted to bathe. Eri hesitated, and he realized she was practicing her back rub. Eri asked if that was necessary. Lala confirmed this and said that it was so, that she could help Pepperon perfectly. She lifted Eri's hands and was about to wash her. Eri asked her to stop, because it wasn't her back at all. She said that she couldn't hold out and left. Pochi sympathized when suddenly Lala's voice was heard. Eri immediately ran away. The man laughed, thinking about Nobo and the others having fun with Pepperon. The boy looked stern. They were outside, and everyone was happy. Manasi even missed the world. Pepperon said that before they parted, they should divide the treasure. The girls were delighted while Rock examined the sword. Pepperon said that it was the Rage Sword. There is no other in the world, and it is a rare thing. This is proof of defeating the guardian god. Pepperon told Rock to keep it. The boy thanked him. After sorting out the treasures, they were about to go to the village. Rock was surprised and asked if they would rest in Rabal. Pepperon said that they had created a village and they needed to return quickly. He also said that he didn't want to be seen and that Rock would be very helpful if he didn't tell about them. The guy agreed. Manga hugged Mike and said that they would have fun in the village later. Fan said goodbye to Nobo, and the girls went to Manasi. The girl turned away and asked them to be careful. She said that she didn't like goodbyes, and it would be great if they met again. They interrupted her and thanked her for everything. They said that they would try to become stronger in magic before they met. Manasi couldn't take it anymore and burst into tears. She hugged them and cried loudly. Rock said that they too would become stronger, and then they would go on another adventure. Then they will become even stronger. Pepperon asked the boy to call him by his name. They became comrades and were very happy about it. Rock smiled and said that they would meet again. Pepperon agreed, and after that they parted. The boys said that they had not seen such a strong gnome for a long time, and there was a lot in the world that they did not know. Mike noticed they hadn't seen gnomes for a long time. They weren't a rare race at all. Suddenly, someone called the boys. The residents asked if they had taken over the tower and if it was their doing. Rock wanted to explain everything, but remembered Pepperon's request for confidentiality. Suddenly, the people noticed the sword and said that they had eaten the towers. They did not let Roku get a word in, wanting to tell everything in the city because those who had captured the tower had appeared. Rock denied everything. Reese sighed, and Panna asked what was wrong. The girl said they went with everyone else, but she didn't think she was being helpful. Panna thought that Riss could do magic, but she didn't help at all. She didn't know if she could become as strong, because then she would be left behind. Suddenly, Reese exclaimed that when they returned to the village, they would train. They would not lose to Manasi, and they would do everything to support each other. Panna smiled and agreed. She said she wouldn't hold back and wanted it. At that time, someone was looking at Pepperon. The girl said she had found the gnome that was rumored. A few days later, after a rather difficult expedition to Bor's Tower, the village was quite noisy. At that time, Lala and Fantasia were doing their best to take care of the locals and the general well-being of the children. Gus went to collect various information in the nearest town from the village, while Eri began to conduct various experiments using the book she was able to find in Bor's Tower. Also, along with conducting experiments, Eri took on the training of one sage. Nobo, in turn, was responsible for expanding the various facilities in the village. Pochi was busy with something else at the time. The man loudly exclaimed that that was all. He told the others that they could rest for 5 minutes, and after that they would run 50 laps around the village. His students agreed in unison. Goblin Girl Coco leaned her hands on her knees and panted heavily, glad that they were finally getting a break. Kobold Hachi wiped the sweat from his face with one hand and caught his breath, then said that she was really on the edge, then said that it was an extremely pitiful sight. Harpy, Atori leaned on her belt and said that Hachi himself was barely breathing. Titan Dag turned pale and fell to his knees, saying that this certainly did not suit him, since he would rather do some kind of research. Hachi kicked Dag hard, then declared that his body, on the contrary, should be adapted to any battle even more than theirs, because he shouldn't just read books. Dag covered his face and sighed resentfully. Little Mr. Pepperon came up to Pochi and asked him how the man was doing. Pochi was happy to see his friend. He looked up at the students and said that he was trying to keep them in line, because they were pretty strong guys. He said that soon it would be possible to go hunting. Pepperon said that he was glad about this. Suddenly, Pochi said that they all have different backgrounds. Because of this, there are small quarrels, and therefore he would like them to become more friendly and act as a team. Pepperon agreed with this, after which he said that he had an idea. Pochi loudly exclaimed to the boys that they should gather together. He announced that Mr. Pepperon had something to talk to them about. He asked them to listen carefully to everything he said to them. Pepperon stepped forward. Seeing him, Coco was very surprised by this. Hachi smiled and asked if this meant that there would be a reward now. Atori calmly said that this was obviously not the case. Pepperon said that he wanted to first express his gratitude for their work today, and also added that he had some tasks for them. Upon hearing about the task, Coco was quite surprised and asked him about it again. Pepperon said that the boys will have to go to Timon's cave, which is located nearby on the southern side. He wants them to exterminate the king of the slimes there and collect the materials he needs. Dag was confused when he heard about the king of the slugs and then said that there would be monsters there. Pepperon smiled and said that there was no reason to worry, because they were all extremely weak. If they worked together, it would be easy. Coco awkwardly said that even if it was, she wondered if it would be safe to send them there alone. Pochi brought Rice and Panu forward and said that they would be accompanying the boys on the mission. He explained that the girls had participated in the expedition to Bor's Tower, and so he would be good mentors for them. Hearing this, Hachi looked displeased. Pochi said that this time the guys would be led by Panna and Riss. The girls smiled and said that they were pleased to cooperate with the guys. Suddenly, Hachi raised his hand high and asked if he could ask one question. Somewhat confused, Pepperon asked what had happened. Hachi smiled and said that perhaps it would be too confident of them, but they had not trained with Pochi in vain, and he did not think that the girls were much stronger than them, even if they had some experience in expeditions. Hearing such impudence, Reese stepped forward and barked at the boy. Looking at this, Mr. Pepperon only sighed quietly. Atori closed her eyes and said that she partly agreed with what Hachi said. She stated that she didn't really want to be bossed around by people they didn't know very well. At that moment, Pochi came up to them and smashed their heads together. He asked these fools what they were allowing themselves to say, because training and real battles are completely different things that cannot be compared under any circumstances. He told the boys that they must listen to all orders given to them without question. Hachi and Atori held their heads, fearfully agreeing with this. Riss and Panna at this time looked at what was happening in some surprise. It was quite early outside. Suddenly Nobo came up to the boys and noticed where Pepperon was, because he had been looking for him for a long time. Suddenly he noticed something strange. Seeing the boys were on their way, he recognized them, and said that they were the special students that everyone was talking about. Pochi smiled awkwardly and asked Pepperon to forgive these stupid boys. The guy sighed and smiled, saying that it was even good that they had something to say, because it even reminded him of Pachi himself when they first met. Pachi looked down and smiled, saying that he didn't even have anything to answer. Afterwards, he smiled broadly and said that Pepperon should not worry, because they would definitely become stronger, and they would be true knights both in body and in spirit. Nobo adjusted his glasses and said that it would be a problem if the boys grew up like Pochi, because he had to learn humility. Pochi got angry and asked if Nobo really wanted to fight him. Pepperon said that Nobo had better tell him what he had come about. The man explained that a male merchant had come, and he wanted to inform Nobo about it. Pochi exclaimed that his conversation with Nobo was not over yet. At this time, the cave northwest of Gloria Septum was quite tense. In the dimly lit cave sat a demon with 3 horns, Shin's bodyguard. Suddenly, someone told him that someone had finally been found. Shin opened his eyes and asked what his interlocutor wanted. The same 3-horned demon, Shin, who had the title of princess, stood before him. She said that she heard that he lost to a pathetic human, and it made her laugh. Shin looked up and asked the princess how she knew about this. Rin told him that the former bodyguard boss named Petros had been captured by the Arphazariad Empire before. After she said she would free him if he told her everything, he gave her a large amount of different information. She said that even though he was free now, the Air Force would soon be hunting him down. Sheen turned away and said he didn't remember ever serving under someone like that. Rin reached into her bag and said she didn't care about it. She pulled out something and said it wasn't surprising that he lost, since he was a very tough opponent. When Rin took out some photos, Shin immediately jumped up and asked if she had met him already. Rin covered her face with the photo and smirked. She said she hadn't met him yet, but she was keeping an eye on him, because she needed to gather information on him first. She said his name was Pepperon. He is the king of a newly created country, which is more of a village, and its name is Gloria Septim. Shin bared his teeth when he heard the name. Rin told her that the Air Force had ordered her to kill him, but the thing is that he keeps assistants of a very good level around him, which greatly hinders her in her task. She asked Shin if he could deal with them. Hearing such a request, the demon was very surprised and asked what she was talking about. She turned around and said that it didn't mean she couldn't deal with them on her own, but he would definitely be able to get rid of all these people who were interfering. She smirked and said that she would take care of that little guy. Suddenly, Shin got really angry and pointed his gun at her. In a very cruel voice, he said that she should not underestimate him, and they also should not interfere in the matter that he started. She sighed and with a smile on her face said that everything was exactly as she thought. But he should realize something. In the blink of an eye, she quickly turned towards him and bent down to deliver a powerful blow from below. Shin was surprised, but did not have time to dodge. Rin folded her palm for a proper strike, then quickly swung and grabbed him by the throat. With an ominous aura around her, Rin said that she was in no mood to listen to such comments from him, who was not even competent enough to complete one task and kill a guy. Rin let him go and reminded him that she had said she would take care of him, but she didn't know why he shouldn't do it too. She proposed an interesting game to Shin to see who would kill Pepperon first. Shin quietly said that this was some kind of nonsense. She sighed and said that he shouldn't be so serious, and then added that they were all heading to Grace's dungeon. She stood up and walked leisurely towards the exit. Rin said that she didn't really care whether he went or not, but it was better than just lying in this cave without any meaning. Slowly, she walked out of the cave, leaving only a farewell that echoed throughout the room. He silently watched the girl, while his face expressed a certain bewilderment. He was thinking about what to do next. A deathly silence hung in the cave. The guy frowned.